Every year, the most beautiful, inventive and inspirational new homes in the country go head-to-head in a competition organised by the Royal Institute of British Architects to find the best new house in Britain. Over the last year, the RIBA have trawled through hundreds of hopeful entries, putting together a long list of the best architecture this country has to offer. From small-scale buildings that wear their craftsmanship on their sleeve. This is not what I expected. There's a courtyard in the middle of the building. To magnificently epic dwellings. And I can simply waft to the bed in my nightdress. Each one magical, different and remarkable in their own right. Oh, I'm in a spaceship now. We'll be visiting these 18 astonishing homes across the series as they get whittled down to a shortlist of 7. Then in the final programme, here on Channel 4, we'll find out who has scooped the grand prize to become the House of the Year 2017. It's always exciting and a privilege, in fact, to be invited into a secret world, to look around other people's places, to see inside some of Britain's most extraordinary houses. I hold the magic invisible key to the front door, so let's go. I've got it. Fine architecture can come in many guises and forms. It can be a single object that shouts, "Look at me!" Or it can come as an almost invisible whisper. It can be magnificent and elegant, like this place, St Anne's Court in Surrey, designed by Raymond McGrath in 1936. It can be fluid and curved, straight-edged or knobbly. For it to be good, it has to be inventive. It has to make you feel good. But if it is to be great, it must always speak of its time. Exploring these amazing buildings with me will be Editor-at-Large of L Decoration, Michelle Ogundehin. And architect Damion Burrows.
Can I sniff your cork?
As usual, we've split the long list into 4 loosely themed categories, and we'll look at a different one in each episode. This time, we've grouped the houses into a category which an architect might call vernacular. Fancy term, but all it really means is that a building might use local materials in some way or acknowledge a local tradition in architecture. To you and I, the vernacular is how we might speak, of course, and that's what all these houses do in this episode. They engage in a conversation with their location. They're born of it. They speak the local lingo. And our very first house on the long list speaks with a West Country accent, as it's in Bath, a city awarded UNESCO World Heritage Site status for its classical beauty, executed in one material, Bath stone. The city of Bath is a fantastically coherent statement, a single statement about what architecture should be in the 18th century, early 19th century. It reflected a passion, a belief that somehow in this local stone, masons and architects could reproduce some of the civic values of the ancient world. All very well then, but what do you build in a place like this now? The answer is you put up a building that resonates to the ideas, colours and textures of its historic surroundings, and yet is altogether new. Hill House. The owners and architects behind this home are Anne Claxton and Mike Keyes. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
You must be Anne, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Hi.
Nice to meet you. Hi, and Mike.
Hello, hi.
How are you? How has it been finished?
Just under 2 years.
So 2 years to live in it and get to know it.
Yeah.
But have you always lived in Bath?
We bought this, which was a bungalow, about 13 years ago, with the aim of building a new house. We thought we'd be a couple of years in the house. It turned out to be about 10 years before we actually knocked it down.
But was that determined by you or by the planners in Bath?
It was us entirely. We took a long time just thinking about it, and
Yeah.
the kids were growing up. So we just sort of let it flow a bit until the house literally got to the point where we had to get rid of it and start again.
It was certainly worth the wait. Set in 1/3 of an acre and covering 220 square metres, Hill House is made of 2 offset blocks. You enter into a hallway with a service corridor running the spine of the house. The south-facing, open-plan living area connects the master bedroom at one end with a study in the middle, which leads on to a second and third bedroom. Nice and neat. But while the house may look like it's Bath stone, Anne and Mike have in fact used bricks, lookalikes with flush lime mortar to produce a continuous texture, redolent of its neighbours.
We felt that Bath stone was a bit too harsh and bright. So although it's not Bath stone, we were very careful to make sure that the texture, the colour, the tone of it matches.
The RIBA judges said that modernism of this quality is rare within the centre of Bath and should be encouraged. And this understated modernism carries on indoors. Oh, it's nice and cool in here. I want to be drawn down this corridor because the ceiling sort of betrays how the building's built.
Yeah. So the joists are all exposed all throughout.
It's all out of wood.
Yeah.
Construction was in timber frame, with the addition of 2 massive steel lintels to support the entire south side of the building, allowing uninterrupted floor-to-ceiling glazing. Oh, there's your reveal. That's quite theatrical. Whoa, hey! As you walk through, it sort of, absolutely lifts.
This is all about connecting out. Because we had a reasonable sized plot, we wanted the opportunity for all the rooms to open out. You can see all the bedrooms have sliding doors as well.
Mike and Anne's daughters have their bedrooms and living space at the opposite end from their parents, with their own private exit, essential for teenage life.
It's quite good being able to come in and not sort of wake everyone up. It doesn't mean you sort of have to worry about being told off for coming in too late. You can just sneak in at whatever time you like. And no one ever knows.
They do now. This unconventional yet beautiful house brings something new to Bath, which hasn't always been welcomed in the past.
It was a sensitive site, surrounded by historic buildings, many of them listed. We were concerned whether or not proposed developments would respect that context and actually enhance not only the setting of the historic buildings, but also that part of the conservation area.
You could potentially have put a number of houses on, or we could have built a much bigger house.
Yeah.
But we kind of built what we felt was appropriate for the site.
And this sensitive and frankly modest approach won the planners over.
It does prove that actually you can deviate from classical architecture and actually still be successful, even in a place like Bath.
And while Hill House is clearly a modern thing, a love of the surroundings is written into its DNA. This is brilliant. It's a bathroom with a double doors, deliberately so that, you can lie in the bath and...
Yeah, you can lie in the bath and get the view of the church.
I mean, how much time do you spend in the bath looking at that view?
I'm often in the bath, aren't I? Yeah. Not all day.
The connection from Bath to Bath and all of the thought that went into making this house fit in was helped by 10 years of living on the site before building works even started. Spending time in a place, knowing this place intimately, must make itself felt in the building when it's finished.
Yeah, all sorts of little decisions, I guess, from the materials to how we've sited the building to how we live in it, I think are all part of that.
The more you put into it, the more you get out. So all the things that we've actually physically done and taken time over adds to our experience of living here.
A developer could have moved in and just chucked up, 3 or 4 townhouses. Instead, these guys have lived here. They've rooted themselves in this community. They've got to know this place. They've learned the language of Bath. And as a result, they built a 21st century building that is utterly uncompromising. One that speaks the language of international modernism, yes, but is also able to write a little bit of local poetry. From West Country poetry to the songs of the Highlands, there are 4 more homegrown, locally inspired properties to visit before we find out which have made the shortlist for House of the Year. The homes that are being considered for the RIBA House of the Year couldn't be more different, from clever, urban, skinny fit, hipster living spaces to wild and woolly rural hideaways with pork chop sideburns. The common denominator, what they all share, is conviction and originality, a desire to do whatever is asked of them better. Traditionally, buildings in the windswept Scottish Highlands have been constructed to be sturdy. But architect Damion Burrows is here to see a house that is more than just functional. Designed by outdoor enthusiasts Jill Scampton and Andy Barnett.
We've been coming here mountaineering for decades, and as a pair of architects, you know, there are just some stunning places to build here, so we always have had this ambition to do a project up here.
Jill and Andy bought run-down Fernaig cottage for about £100,000. And they loved this 150-year-old shepherd's hut so much, they didn't just restore it, they built it a twin.
Hi, Damien. Good to meet you.
How are you?
Yeah.
Hi, Devon. Good to meet you.
Thank you.
This is stunning. The proportions are so pleasing.
Yeah, well, the proportions come from the traditional Scottish longhouse, and it had its own charm, really, right from the start.
The original cottage on the left and the new extension on the right are the same shape, but inside, the old part contains 3 bedrooms and a bathroom, while the new addition houses a single open-plan kitchen, dining and living space.
We took away a lean-to shed at the front of the house. We used that stone to build the stone walls at the front of the new bit. We didn't import any stone, it's all come from what we had on the site.
But while the stones may not have travelled far, for the tin roof, they went all the way to Sweden. Rusting steel roofs are a familiar sight on old Highland buildings, and Jill and Andy wanted to keep that idea, but in a material that would withstand the Scottish seasons. This high-performance, zinc-coated steel is finished with sustainable paint made from rapeseed oil, and the Swedes were apparently the only ones that had the right shade of red to match the original. But if the outside stays true to its farming heritage, inside tells a different story.
Wow, this is so crisp and light in here. It's a complete contrast to the outside of the building. Everything's so sharp and neat, the light's flooding in.
The large windows have been carefully positioned to capture the most of Scotland's precious sunlight and to frame the great views out. But where the lower, newer part of the house is more restrained, as you move gently up to the bedroom wing, the cottage's history shines through.
This side of the house very much is inspired by the original shepherd's hut.
We wanted to keep a lot of the character of the original cottage because we really enjoyed that.
And that is such a cute little window down there. So that would have gone down to the floor originally.
I think they blocked it up, but we think the sheep came in and out of there. And then we just unblocked a bit of it to put a window in. But it's just perfect height for lying in bed and, you know, looking out.
The RIBA judges said that Jill and Andy had, with gentle diligence, enhanced this remote little corner of Scotland. The secret of their success was to take time to work out the design. Jill and Andy visited the rundown house once a month for 2 years to test and develop their ideas.
It had a coal tap. It did have a loop, but you had to flush it with a bucket, and it had electricity, so you could just about manage to visit. It was a wreck, really, but it was enough that we could get a feel for the light and how the sun was coming in the mornings and the evenings.
Once they'd worked out their approach, they chose a local builder, Adam MacDonald, who'd never worked on anything so challenging.
At the very beginning, I said to Andy and Jill, you know, my limitations, there's things I've not done, and it'll be a learning curve. Well, a lot of houses you're building for clients, they're not going to know if house is an inch smaller or 3 inches wider, but Jill actually measured it when she came up and said it was within 3 mil or 5 mil of the foundations, you know, which I was delighted with. It was good to work to that, you know, exacting tolerance, but it put a fair bit of stress on us.
But even more demanding than Adam's clients' standards were the weather conditions.
You want to get as much done in the summer months as you can, but in summer months, midges are here. So yeah, we had to have midge hoods on most of the time. And then with the stonework, you could only do that at certain times of year with the frost. So we had to try and fit all that in before the bad weather came. When the winter came, then you had the snow and the ice.
From the end result, it's clear Adam works well under pressure. Watching this site evolve over the 4 years since they bought it has been one of Andy and Jill's 2 daughters, Florence.
My whole life they've brought me here. I think for them it was almost like their 3rd child, really. It was kind of their baby. They're a great team, actually. They both know what each other is kind of thinking. It's funny how they kind of both work really well. They might have arguments on really tiny, petty details, but actually they kind of just get on with it, and I've always been really impressed.
For just shy of 300 grand, you've got this incredible house with amazing views in its own land.
We have done it from a point of view of love and passion of architecture and the Highlands.
We're, you know, overjoyed, really. It's a treasure for us.
Yeah. How could you not be? It's fantastic. It's a really great home. What truly sets this house apart is the relationship between the old and the new. What Andy and Jill have managed to do here is to bring together 2 different worlds and knit them with seamless grace.
You know, it's easy to cloak a building in local materials to get it to fit somewhere. I mean, that's just camouflage. Whereas it's much harder to delicately adjust the colour, the rhythms, the height, the shape, the details of somewhere in order to get it to echo the spirit of a place. And that is much more subtle. All the homes in this programme do that. And our next house does so by drawing on the tradition of the South London terraced house. What a charming 19th century typical London street this is. Victorian houses covered in pebbled ash, very polite. And opposite them, a brand new 21st century addition, something just as polite. This is number 49, an update of the London terraced house that takes advantage of its wider plot. While Victorian terraces usually sit on a long, narrow sliver of land, number 49 sits sideways on the road. The house revolves around a central kitchen diner, which connects to a living room and studio space in the side return. There's 1 bedroom downstairs and a master one upstairs, along with a TV room cum spare room. The owners, a couple, Stephen Davis, who was also the architect, and Laura Lewis Davis, a museum curator. Oh, hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well. How about
Good to meet you? Yeah, very well. Good to see you. Hi, Stephen. What a great building. It's got great poise, this building. It's beautifully polite. This seems to sort of take the language of all of these terraced houses and kind of rework it almost. Am I allowed in?
Yes, let's go in.
Great. Thank you. The outside may be polite, but the interior is a bit more progressive. There aren't many traditional rooms, but a series of semi-enclosed spaces that fluidly lead one to another. Oh. Oh. How very beautiful. So just like the outside, it's very controlled inside. It's very judicious, you know? It's kind of serene.
Measured.
Measured, yeah, that's a good word for it. So what you've done is you've occupied a plot which is sort of roughly the same area as one of those terraced houses.
Yeah.
You've just sort of swung it around through 90 degrees, effectively, and you've got slightly less garden.
Yes.
But in fact, you've got 2 open spaces because you've got one.
Well, we've got 3 because we've got that one.
You've got 3?
Yeah.
Oh, blimey. So actually, you're doing all right. Stevens made the very best of their small plot by blurring boundaries and merging thresholds. Extra wide openings make the kitchen feel bigger. Storage boxes cleverly double as room dividers. Upstairs, the traditional waste of space that is the landing has been dissolved into surrounding rooms with multiple sliding doors. So you have a choice. You can move from the cupboards, which are cleverly positioned behind this door here, which is sort of a dressing room, yeah? And I can simply waft to the bed in my nightdress this way and out to the bathroom there. Or if I happen to be watching television till 2 a.m., yeah, I can be quiet and I can not disturb my partner, and instead I can creep in to the bedroom this way too. It's all been beautifully designed and organised by Stephen. But he doesn't have the monopoly on organisation. You work in museums.
I do.
And there is a sense, looking around the room, that it feels very curated, right? And that can't be accidental.
It's very much about not having things that are overcluttered, but also having things in collections. When you've lived in an old house, it's got nooks and crannies. And we were really conscious not to design out nooks and crannies, because you need nooks and crannies. Nooks and crannies have character. You can display your objects.
And the fastidious approach to display can even be found in the utility room. I think their attitude to domestic organisation is exemplified by the pegboard. I've never been to a house that looks so perfectly organised. It's like being on a photo shoot. Look at it. I don't touch anything. I mean, what's that for? One key by itself. What's that for? Don't really want to know. But it's precisely this level of organisation and care that makes this house remarkable, and it's exemplified by my favourite bit. When I first saw the photographs of this place that the RIBA sent through, the one photograph that made me stop in my tracks was of this staircase. Because it occupies a tiny, tiny footprint. It's like a medieval winder. It goes up on itself as in a tower. It fits so snugly and neatly into the building. And it has a kind of grandeur almost about it, despite its tiny size. Oh, and by the way, it looks as though it was crafted, as indeed it was, by one person. Stephen commissioned the joiner, James Christopher, to build this mini masterpiece.
Initially, I just laughed at him, basically, because I said, you're just going to spend more than you earn in a year to make a curved staircase. It's just not worth it.
But together, they came up with an ingenious and affordable way of making it.
Beneath that curved staircase is a completely standard kite and winder staircase. So 2 straight flights with a set of winders between it. What I was then able to do was I was able to create formwork that created the curve that Steve wanted to then overclad the staircase with a completely curved barrel. Oh, it was a massive amount of work.
It's taken a lot of hard graft to make a house that appears so effortless. But has all that work been appreciated by the neighbours?
No, I love particularly the bricks that I've used on that. They're very unusual, not something I've seen before. It's definitely improved our view from the front of the house.
Wow, it's rare people can say that with architecture.
Yeah, I love it.
People are flattered maybe that he's decided to actually build down our street rather than any other street. So I think there's a lot of pride in that.
It's a powerful building indeed that helps people find fresh value in where they live. Number 49 has taken a classic story of design and layout and rewritten it for its time and place. What an exquisite house, eh? What a quietly radical interior. What a contribution to place it makes, too. You know, as a result of all this, its antecedents, the houses that themselves were born in the 1880s that are across the road here, these lovely Victorian cottage terraces. These homes can now look over the road at their grandchild and say to it, "You are all right, mate. Go on, my son." 2 more wild projects remain to be seen in this selection of local houses.
But I remember on my first visit, I thought it was humongous.
Before we discover which will make the final 7.
You know, for a small country, we have an unusually diverse variety of building traditions and materials. And that's because the geological time span between the granite mountains of West Wales and the mud flats of East Anglia is about 1 billion years, which means every 25 miles you travel in the UK, the geology changes from chalk to clay to limestone to slate, which means traditional local building materials change, and so the buildings themselves change. All of which means our architecture has the potential to be rooted to where it is.
This is Kent, where the chalk of the South Downs gives way to a clay soil, perfect for making roof tiles for the area's signature building. The Oast. Thousands of these sprang up from the 1800s to dry hops for the nation's breweries. Now most are converted into homes. But the owners of our next project chose to build a new one and give it bodybuilding classes. Caring Wood is a collection of oast houses on steroids, set in an 84-acre estate and covering a mega 1,443 square metres. This home has been built on a stony outcrop and accommodates 3 generations of one extended family. Michelle Ogundehin met the architects behind this beast, Niall Maxwell and James MacDonald Wright.
James, how does something of this size even begin to come off the ground?
The clients for this house are my parents-in-law, and we had a number of conversations that came out of large family holidays where we were renting houses so that we could spend time together, and eventually that sort of spun off into a brief for a house that we could all come and spend time together at.
So this is one house for Mum and Dad, and then the 3 daughters and all your respective families.
3 generations.
The jumble of towers appears confusing at first, but when viewed from above, you can see that they're 4 oast houses built around a square core. You enter into the upper floor of the main block, which houses a gallery and concert space. Then you go down to the main communal living floor, all of which is built around a 3-storey hidden courtyard. Then off the main building are 4 individual houses with bedrooms for the extended family, which are reached by hidden passageways.
This really is like the modern country house. There's one space that generations of a family can all come together and enjoy.
Part of the original brief was very much an English country house, but we explored the nature of that.
It's a very particular landscape in Kent. It's not something that's replicated across the country. In Kent, the Oast is a very strong symbol, and we were keen to capture that.
I can't wait to see inside.
Come and have a look.
Thank you.
You enter straight into a true grand hall that serves as a gallery and performance space.
I mean, this is certainly more than your average hallway.
Part of our brief here was to provide a space for music and art, and so it linked very well that we would have this formal hall.
But as you move down the grand staircase, things become more familiar and more domesticated.
Ah, so now here we are in the heart of the house. But it already does feel much more intimate than those sort of big public spaces upstairs. I wouldn't quite go so far as to say it feels cosy, but it does just feel like a rather glorious big family kitchen.
Although this house is on a massive scale, it still works as an extended family home. The 4 oast houses, where each branch of the family have their bedrooms, break down what could be an overwhelming building into bite-sized chunks.
Everybody within the family got to choose which oast they preferred. Fortunately, everyone chose a different one. My wife and I, this is our room. There's definitely a strong sense of privacy. It's quite nice to know that you've got that sort of quiet space to sit and read or think or listen to music.
But of course, it's when the house is full of the noise and life of an extended family that it really comes alive.
I remember on my first visit, I thought it was humongous, and we often walk around saying, "Where are you?" And someone was like, "I'm over here, look, where is that?"
But James has developed a practical solution for finding lost children.
Come in, children, are you there? Over.
We are here, Father.
What's your 10 for?
We are in the room with the piano. Over.
If the hustle and bustle of family life gets too much, the house has a 3-storey central courtyard for quiet contemplation.
It feels incredibly peaceful and calm, and a real quiet spot at the centre of all this sort of family activity that you can imagine revolving around it. It's very meditative.
A lot of thinking time went into this house. There were 3 years spent on design, and then another 3 on construction. The walls were made of poured concrete, and the roof is cross-laminated timber. But despite these high-tech innards, the RIBA judges particularly admired the rich, warm palette that ties the house to the Kent countryside. The floor tiles are made of local clay. The walls are clad in Kentish ragstone. But it's the Kent peg roof tiles that really leave an impression. They've been handmade locally since 1588. For the current factory, Caring Wood was one of their biggest ever orders.
So tell me, what is a Kent peg tile?
Kent peg tiles are smaller than a standard tile. They're flat, they have no nibs on the back, and they have these lovely square holes here. And it's where the expression "you can't put a square peg in a round hole" comes from.
Ah, wow.
A maker can make an average of 1,200 tiles a day.
150,000 were needed for Caring Wood, and the whole order took a year to complete. Each piece of clay is sprinkled with sand for texture, shaped, cut, marked with a handprint, and punched with the maker's mark.
Right, so, OK. Oh! So how's that? Will that pass?
Let's have a look. Got all the markings, handprint, holes, sand coverage.
Yay! Excellent. I like this. This is my little unique marking here.
1,199 to go.
The grey clay tiles turn a rich red oxide on firing to contribute to a soft, informal and welcoming language of buildings that in Caring Wood translates indoors too.
Niall, do you get to visit?
Yeah, but I'm coming as a guest now. It's great to experience, and more importantly, it's great to see it being used and enjoyed.
Despite its scale, this contemporary interpretation of the English country house doesn't feel remotely grand or pompous inside. It's really just a big, happy, friendly family home.
How on earth do you compare buildings that are so different? These houses are not being judged on their size or style or budget, but on a whole bunch of criteria that add up to architectural merit.
The jury making the tough decisions is led by esteemed architect and critic Deborah Saunt, along with last year's winner, Richard Murphy, and comedian Jenny Eclair, here as a lay assessor, whose own house won the prize in 2005.
Well, I'm the least trained of all the judges, but I might be the one that asks the questions that people at home might be wanting to know.
It's up to them to scrutinise every detail and junction in these buildings before deciding on the winner.
It's a bit like bringing together lots of people at a restaurant where they all want different things, but you've somehow got to agree on one shared meal.
Do you sometimes have an allergy to things that are perfect?
No, I strive for perfection in my life.
We've seen 4 exceptional houses now. There's just one more remarkable home to see before we find out which will be added to the shortlist for the RIBA House of the So far, we've visited 4 buildings in our local traditions and materials category for the House of the Year 2017. There's just one more plucky contender to see.
For millennia, our homes were made from the very ground beneath our feet and the trees above our heads. Damion has gone to see a house that's continuing that essential relationship.
This is Northumberland, one of the least populated parts of England, and home to an unusual form of local architecture, the Basel House. These were Tudor period fortified farmhouses built to defend from would-be raiders. They had a first floor living area with room for livestock below, and their influence is felt in our next house.
Look at that. That looks very smart indeed.
This is Shorm House, made of locally quarried stone and larch from near the Scottish border. This is clearly a house of Northumberland.
Hi.
It's home to retirees Anne and Tony Pender and their son Richard, who was the project's builder.
Hi. Hi. This is a stunning build, isn't it? It looks so sharp you could cut your finger on it. You really could. Who lives there? Do you all live there?
It's built for us as our retirement home, really. We lived for 20-odd years in the old farmhouse across the way there.
The new building sits against the wall of the courtyard garden and incorporates the farm's old stable block. On the ground floor are 3 bedrooms, a utility room and a study in the old stables. On the new top floor is an open-plan living kitchen and dining room, and next to it, they built a mini-me garage. The upside-down living arrangement is a deliberate nod to Northumberland's past.
Intentional historical reference there because of the Basel House here, which was built to have the living quarters upstairs, so when the Scots came hoarding down, you could pull a ladder up and pour boiling oil on them.
But an unconventional layout wasn't Richard's only challenge as the builder. This was his first big construction job, after a career move from environmental lobbying.
Had you built anything before?
Yeah, I didn't have that much experience. Did a couple of sort of small flat renovations. It was certainly a nerve-wracking venture to sort of leap into.
I mean, it looks incredible from the outside. I can't wait to see if you've maintained that same level of detail and quality on the inside. This is really light, isn't it?
Yes. I find it quite uplifting when I first come in.
The double-height hallway runs into the stable block, where there's the master bedroom and a generous study. But if you don't fancy the stairs, there's a lift to the first floor.
Wow.
There we are. Welcome upstairs.
Look at this space. From the conversation we were having, I was expecting to come up to a downsized retirement home. This says absolutely everything but.
By going for an upside-down house, Anne and Tony have a living area with generous space, height and inspiring views of the countryside.
It makes you feel you've got a whole new vista ahead of you. It couldn't be more different from the old farmhouse, could it?
You can sit there and simply enjoy the view. It doesn't really matter what the weather's like. It's just lovely looking out of it, as long as it's not fog.
But this house delivers more than views, much more. It is designed with care and built precisely and beautifully by their novice builder, Richard.
How did that work with yourselves as the client and your son as the contractor?
I find it slightly difficult to comment on that. There were very tense moments. They still rumble in the background, I might say.
Could I ask, how much was the budget?
About 420,000.
420,000. Certainly not an insignificant sum. How close did you get?
More or less spot on.
Bit of change?
Haven't heard of it yet.
It's working its way back to you. It'll be in the post.
The marrying of new, clean work with the ancient existing farm buildings delighted the judges. They called the meeting between old and new understated, yet beautifully composed.
What I love about this build is they've integrated this fantastic, great big, sturdy stable block. And that's allowed them to free up so much more space to add this wonderful contemporary extension to the side.
The man that brought these two halves together was architect Dan Kerr, who designed a house that passed the tough local planning restrictions first time.
Designing a building on one side that you know has got to get the planners on board is one thing, but then you've also got to design a building that you have confidence that Richard can build.
Yeah.
You weren't tempted to dumb it down?
All the way through, I think. This wasn't a straightforward build, you know. We were trying to push the boundaries on this one. I think it was just the fact that you were determined to do it, and quite astonishing, really.
Dan, you're stuck right in the middle because you're between the client and the contractor, which traditionally these two bodies would be totally divorced, but here it's the absolute opposite.
There were some times where there were slight disagreements in whether there should be certain details. A few debates around the kitchen table.
Part architect, part family therapist, I think.
Yeah.
In between his conflict resolution work, Dan designed the house to be nigh on carbon neutral. He gave it rainwater harvesting and a micro biomass boiler. And the RIBA judges noted the building's exceptional environmental credentials.
Now, it's a wonderful project, but if there was one part of it that just makes you smile the most, what would that be?
Well, for me, it's the light. I come into this place, or I walk up to this level in the morning, and it's just stimulating. You think, oh, it's nice to be here.
If you were to look at a project like this purely on paper, with all of its complex personal relationships, then it's got complete car crash written all over it. But this project is the absolute opposite. If anything, it demonstrates how if a family pull together, they can achieve a building that's absolutely incredible.
We've now seen all the houses on our locally inspired long list, but which will make the coveted shortlist? It could be Hill House, a fine 21st century addition to the city of Bath that respects its historic setting. Or Vernacular Cottage, that renovated Highland sheep shed that's kept its tin roof. Number 49, an update of a London townhouse that's more than the sum of its parts. Or Caring Wood, a modern country house rooted in the vernacular that couldn't be more Kentish. And a retirement home that's based on a fortified Northumbrian farmstead, Shorm House.
Any of them stands a chance of winning, but the RIBA jury have had to whittle the long list down. So, which have made it through to the shortlist for the big prize?
After much deliberation, our head judge, Deborah Saunt, has the results.
So, Deborah, you've shortlisted a project or two from this category, yeah?
We have. We've got Shorm House here. A fantastic addition of two buildings around the garden wall of an original farmhouse. I think one of the reasons why we decided to shortlist this project was that it didn't shout out loud. It's actually doing something very simple, very, very well. And the care was just wonderful. When you came through here, the light falling from the clean trusses was just wonderful. That you came into this end room that looks very modest here, but actually captures this extraordinary view out across the landscape. I think of all the projects, it's one of the most highly crafted but modest projects. It's kind of got a modesty to it that we really enjoyed.
Really?
Oh,
Can't believe this, it's just amazing.
What was that about champagne?
To be on the shortlist is stunning, beyond words.
So, this finely crafted, elegant house in Northumberland is through. Oh, and there's one more home that's been shortlisted.
Caring Wood, which really does represent the category well of embodying local materials and sort of local traditions and crafts.
They've fastidiously pursued the sort of local supply chain to make this building as rooted as possible.
I think people will be in awe of the craftsmanship here. It is stunning. You cannot find a bad detail. It challenges your preconceptions of what a home is. And it's something that we all shared on the jury. We went in there and just said, what is this? It's not a house for one family with one living room and one set of bedrooms in a traditional sense.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful to know. Feels amazing, you know, after all of this hard work and all the effort that everyone's put in creating this unusual building, it's fantastic.
So, Caring Wood and Shorm House become our first two contenders for House of the Year 2017, joining the shortlist from this local category.
Local materials are sometimes cheaper and they're more practical to build with. They offer the opportunity for instant connection. They can be much more sustainable. They often come also with a bunch of local building skills. And all this provides us with a sort of cultural compass, linking the past with the present and pointing us forward. When we know where we've come from, we can see a little more of where we're going.
Next time, another clutch of 5 remarkable buildings, all homes with a watery theme.
It's quite exciting, waking up in the middle of the night sometimes and realising your tooth is surrounded by water. I hesitate to take in one big gulp, but actually, wow.
All hoping to become House of the Year 2017.
Every year, the most beautiful, inventive and inspirational new homes in the country go head-to-head in a competition organised by the Royal Institute of British Architects to find the best house in Britain.
We'll be exploring the remarkable homes longlisted for this year's prize.
Oh, there's your reveal.
Before discovering which have made the shortlist.
Oh, I'm in a spaceship.
We've already seen the first 2 homes to go through. Now we're investigating 5 more delightful houses, all inspired by water.
So this is very exciting, which I hesitate to take in one big gulp, but actually, wow.
They infuse the imagination, like all the buildings in the competition.
And I can simply waft to the bed in my nightdress.
All of which are magical, distinctive, cleverly designed and beautiful.
This is triumphant.
At the end of this episode, we'll find out which watery home goes through to the shortlist. And then in the final programme, we'll discover the winner here on Channel 4.
You have to look at the degree of tenacity, innovation, persistence, and this project has it all.
There can be only one winner, only one building lucky enough to be awarded the most celebrated prize for residential architecture in Britain. The 2017 House of the Year.
So far, we've seen houses inspired by local materials, and 2 of them have made it onto the shortlist: the quiet and considered Shorm House and the sculptural and rather epic Caring Wood. In this episode, we're looking at homes inspired by water.
We are, let us not forget, a maritime, seafaring nation. For the size of our country, our coastline is one of the longest. So it's not surprising that we've developed a sophisticated language of architecture for building by the water, which, by the way, includes locks, rivers, lakes, tidal estuaries, streams, brooks, burns, pools, ponds.
lagoons.
Exploring these buildings with me are architect Damion Burrows.
The closer you get, the more intriguing it is.
And editor-at-large of Elle Decoration, Michelle Ogundehin, who headed to the south coast in search of our first home, a sumptuous clifftop villa.
The White Cliffs of Dover are one of England's most iconic landmarks. But how do you begin to build a house here? How do you compete with nature? Perhaps the answer is you don't. You build a house that feels like it's been part of the cliff all along.
Jutting from the cliff is a clean white ribbon of chalk. Ness Point, a house which the judges describe as growing out of the land in which it is embedded. Its undulating walls look as though they're from the rock beneath and hunker into the hill, directly mirroring the dramatic and slightly more craggy White Cliffs of Dover. It draws on the language of 30s seaside villas and belongs to interior designer Logan McWatt and his family. The front of the house curves sensuously, with a living room and 3 reception rooms below and 4 elegant bedrooms above. The spaces are modest and every inch is put to good use.
Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
Oh, my goodness, I can see why you picked this spot for a house. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It really feels almost like a bit of a castle on the top of the cliff here.
All our family is Scottish, and I really wanted to bring some of that Scottish feel down into this corner of the UK.
Logan's parents moved to Kent when he was 7, so it's an area he knows well. After living in Hong Kong for 30 years, he returned to England and took the radical decision to demolish his parents' house and build something new.
I've lived in high-rise apartment blocks, and I really wanted to have a house where you walk out and you're onto a veranda, you're on terra firma, and you can call the house your own. The curves of the house do echo the curves of the cliff on Ness Point.
So in a way, you've sort of built your own little bit of cliff here.
Definitely.
It's not just the outside of the building that's unusual. Inside, the judges loved its imaginative layout.
This is great. It feels like you're really bedded into the cliff here, and then it just sort of opens out in front of me.
Well, that was the idea.
And what's going on down here?
This gallery is lit by the skylight above, and we can transform the space, so all these doors can fold back. This is the kitchen area. It can be fully open, and that allows the dining room, for example, next door to be operated in its own right.
These are very easy to open as well.
And then this can open up. And in fact, then the light from the front comes right through to the deep part of the house as well. Well, the idea was to have a flexible arrangement so that if my children are having a dinner party, this can be separated off from the sitting room while I can do my own thing.
This flexibility continues upstairs with bedrooms that open into each other and en suites hidden behind movable screens.
This is what it's all about, isn't it? This is the grand finale of your house.
We've had snapshots of the view, but in fact, this is the big picture.
I mean, I guess when you have living paintings like this, you don't really need wallpaper, do you?
You don't.
On a clear day, you can see the coast of France shimmering on the horizon. It's a view you could never tire of.
Oh, I love that. It's beautiful. I can really imagine myself lying in the bath here, checking out Dover, France, the views, and the sky. Nice.
Logan was based in Hong Kong for most of the project, so responsibility for realizing this curvaceous design lay with the architect, Mike Tonkin, and his team.
It seems like the dream spot to build a house here overlooking this fantastic view, but we are on the edge of a cliff. I mean, were you not worried about the whole house falling into the sea?
Well, we did have an enormous cliff collapse a few years ago. We got a call from Logan, hold everything.
Oh, my gosh.
And so that was a bit scary. But we did some research and worked out he had 400 years.
Oh, OK, so you're safe for 400
so
years.
Okay. Exactly, yeah.
The building also has all these fantastic curvy shapes and curved glass as well. That feels like it'd be really expensive and really complicated.
It used to be really expensive, curved glass. It used to cost 3 times normal glass, but now it does cost 1.3 times. So actually, it's a bit expensive, but there's just a few pieces of it. So what we did is put the curved glass where you really notice it.
The structure of the house was formed with a steel frame and concrete blockwork to resist the weather here. By curving the walls rather than all the windows, Mike's design was cheap and straightforward to build. Only the 2 main picture double-glazed windows are formed using curved glass. To make these sinuous shapes, the glass is heated to 700 degrees. When smoulderingly hot, it enters a series of rollers which bend the glass into a perfect curve. The result is a delightful, rhythmic building that can be readily adapted to Logan and his family's changing needs.
Logan knocked down his parents' house to build this. I don't want his kids to knock down this house. Hopefully it's flexible enough to sort of change its life.
I think this house is here to stay. But while it speaks of the chalk cliffs here, it also has to engage in conversation with its neighbours. The locality is populated with an established mix of period buildings, so anything new was going to be controversial.
Reminds me a bit of Hollywood, but Hollywood is not around here, so I think something more English would be nicer to see. I think it's a bit out of place.
Curved houses, they're sort of more organic in a way and seem to fit more beautifully with the landscape, although fitting furniture in curvy walls might be quite tricky.
This is the life. I wonder if someone could just bring me a G&T.
Good architecture can change the way we live, but Ness Point demonstrates how expediently it can be done, using sliding walls and adaptable spaces instead of vast rooms, and capturing different sliced views.
This house is like a modern-day castle. It owns this bit of the cliff. It's also clever and flexible and future-proof for the next generation. You can really imagine it standing here, proudly looking out to sea for years to come.
So, Ness Point sets the bar high for this year's competition. But we've got 4 more long-listed homes to show you.
All this absolutely reeks of craftsmanship, difficulty and expense.
All of which take their inspiration from water. All of which hope to secure a coveted place on the shortlist.
You are sort of gobsmacked when you approach this building. People don't realise it's a house. They think it's a sort of caravan on some sticks.
The riverside location for this next project provided all the inspiration it needed. The industrial warehouse buildings that were previously on the site were an unlikely starting point for a powerful, jaw-dropping building.
Built on the banks of the River Ouse in Lewes in East Sussex, South Street is a case study in elegant, modern design. The house is home to Stephen and Anita Yeomans and their family, and we were lucky enough to follow it for grand designs.
I've always had an interest and passion for contemporary and modern design. I think I just like beautifully made, sort of well-considered things.
They found a narrow waterside site and weren't afraid to build something bold.
Oh, look, you look polished and relaxed and as composed as your building is. It looks like bronze. It's marvellous the way it changes character.
It's absolutely beautiful. We often say it's even exceeded our expectations.
What you got is a bit of class, a bit of rusty class. Yeah.
Squeezed between cliff, road and river, the house comprises a ground floor glass box of living space with a utility room tucked behind. Upstairs, there are 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms under the rusty roof. The house occupies nearly all of its small riverside site.
This is nice. It's very compressed and dark, this entrance. This is very exciting. Bit of theatre.
Absolutely.
Yeah? You get drawn towards the light, don't you?
Exactly. It creates this really dramatic entrance.
which I hesitate to take in one big gulp, but actually, wow.
This place may appear fierce and brutal outside, but inside it is all warm and woody, a world of craftsmanship. The judges for this year's competition described the living room as a window to the world, taking maximum advantage of the expansive river views. This place is so meticulous there's not a hair out of place.
The fridge is behind this door here. This is the larder.
There's the toaster cupboard. In an age when our kitchens are part of our living rooms and dining rooms,
Yeah.
it's one space, the kitchen has to become then part of the furniture.
Exactly.
And then you have to make another kitchen somewhere else
Yeah.
to actually cook in, or put it in a cupboard, which is what you've done with your toaster.
It was a difficult project from the word go, and many of the locals opposed the contentious decision to clad the building in rusty Corten steel. The then mayor was appalled.
Ugly, in one word. We want to reflect our industrial heritage, but I'm just not sure that an ugly building sticking out like a sore thumb is quite the way to go about reflecting that heritage.
It wasn't just angry neighbours that Stephen and Anita had to contend with. The site itself was a scrap of rubbish land sandwiched between the river and a dual carriageway.
When we first viewed the site, really lacked promise. I think it was a piece of land that no commercial developer would have touched with a barge pole.
It was a former cement factory, so excavations were made difficult by the industrial junk hidden in the ground.
Stephen and Anita gave us an awful lot of trust and a lot of freedom to just get on with the project and use the sort of talents and skills of the people that are around us. That made the project a real success.
The building's design was inspired by the dockyard warehouses that historically lined the river. The architect, Sandy Rendell, has really embraced the house's industrial past in both its shapes and his choice of materials. It was built using a mixture of structurally insulated panels that slot together like a giant jigsaw, a steel frame, and some beautiful board-marked concrete. It was the cladding, however, that proved most controversial, made from a skin of expanded perforated weathering steel. The material's bright when it's milled, but when it gets exposed to the elements, it quickly develops a durable rusty coating. The cladding was extremely challenging to get right.
Looking back at the project, despite a lot of effort and work and time spent on that cladding, it did work out. In a way, it is also the building's greatest single triumph, isn't it?
Yeah, I think probably, but working with the cladding was a challenge in itself. I probably expected too much of it, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's much less significant than I felt at the time.
Yeah.
For Sandy and the team, the cladding was a real ordeal. Because of a defective batch of steel, the perforations in the sheets didn't line up.
I'm really disappointed, I have to say.
The standards on this project are extraordinarily high. And for Sandy, anything short of perfection was failure.
I'm not in the mood for accepting stuff that's not right.
Well, I don't think we should at all.
The manufacturers finally replaced the cladding, and Sandy managed to execute his design with this striking and controversial material.
How's it been received in Lewis?
I think increasingly warmly. It's incredibly prominent. You see it from the train, you see it from the road, you see it from the nature reserve. You can't avoid it, really. I mean, I'd like to think that it might open people's minds to more contemporary architecture in Lewis.
That ambition is laudable, but of course, not everyone's convinced.
I suppose it's quite an unusual building, so you can see why a judging panel would go for something a bit different. But I just hope to goodness there's some much more attractive buildings out there somewhere that might win.
There is no such thing as universal taste. There's no denying, however, this house is a gateway building to the town. Perched, chiselled and strong. A marker for walkers and for river and road traffic. And Stephen and Anita love this home. It binds them to this place.
Being so connected to nature and the weather patterns and the rise and the fall of the river, it's added something hugely special to our lives.
This house, of course it'll have its detractors. Of course people will say it's just a rusting metal box. But it is a beautifully designed and exquisitely crafted rusting metal box. And in the world of architecture, that makes all the difference. Living by the coast, you want a house which drinks in the views and soaks up the seaside atmosphere. However, if you want to be really close to the sea, you have to build a house that isn't afraid to get wet. Essex is probably not the first place that springs to mind when you think of lonely, windswept beaches and rare, endangered wildlife. But hidden in these remote inlets and estuaries is Colne Point Nature Reserve. And somewhere in this watery landscape is our next house. As architect Damion Burrows discovered, this year's long-listed buildings come in all shapes and sizes. And some of them don't even look like houses at all.
This stunning area is incredibly popular with bird watchers. And the house that I've come to have a look at is actually named after a seabird, the red shank. It's an elegant, beautiful bird with long red legs and a speckled brown body. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, I think I've just spotted one.
Perched in the salt marsh, this bird-like building is a compact one-bedroom house designed as a studio for sculptor Marcus Taylor. Marcus and his family built their first house here in 2010, and when an adjacent plot came up for sale, he saw a chance to do something wildly different.
Marcus, this looks like it's waiting to sort of take off and start walking somewhere.
We had a picture of the red shank with its legs coming out of the water. It just felt right for this landscape.
At only 49 square metres, Red Shank packs in an open-plan kitchen and living area, a small balcony, one bedroom and one bathroom. It's so tiny, you may be wondering how it waded its way onto the long list. But the judges described it as extraordinary. Built using giant timber panels, it's beautifully detailed and deals effortlessly with a challenging site. It's not just built next to the sea. Twice a day when the tides rise, it's actually in it.
This becomes an island, this part of the coast. I don't know if you've ever tried to dig into water, but it doesn't work very well.
Yeah, no.
It was a bit of a learning curve for everybody involved. There were several occasions when builders' tools floated off down the creek.
How about all the panelling for the build itself?
There were trials at times. The first panel that was lifted off turned into a huge sail, which swung all over the place and hit the crane.
You get hit by one of those?
Yeah, I didn't think it'd survive. And in fact, I think everybody was pretty scared in that first lift.
Yeah.
We had to dump the first one into the marsh.
One of the most striking elements of this building is its cladding, cork. Actually, a surprisingly weatherproof material. It's durable, lightweight, an excellent insulator, fire, rot and mold resistant, and beautiful. Portugal supplies 50% of the world's cork. Its cork oak forests cover 1 million hectares. Every 9 years, the tree's bark is stripped and then completely regrows, making the process 100% sustainable. When compressed at high temperatures, the shredded cork expands and sap within it melts, gluing it all together. There are no added ingredients, and the final product is completely natural. Once cooled, these giant cork bricks can be cut to measure, and the cladding is ready to go.
Wow. I wasn't expecting this. You come from outside, from the bluster and the wind, and as soon as you're in here, it's just calm. And the view is just incredible.
It's quite exciting. I mean, it's, you know, waking up in the middle of the night sometimes and realising you're totally surrounded by water, especially on a very still night when there's nothing else but the water and the moonlight.
This eccentric sculptural house feels right at home in this otherworldly landscape. Its long red legs are reminiscent of the Maunsell sea forts dotted off the Essex coast. And it's surrounded by an architectural mishmash of derelict buildings, wind turbines, and sea junk.
Well, it's really like the place that time forgot. It's like these ghost towns that you see in America that just appear out of nowhere. But this has an added effect because it's like it's been washed in from the beach. I think what Marcus has done here has been absolutely quite amazing. We thought it looked rather like the War of the Worlds, these giant things with sort of long legs that were sort of marching their way along the planet.
Against this stark, isolated backdrop, Marcus and his architect, Lisa Shell, have made a building that is both solitary and self-assured.
The site itself has so many constraints on it, with the tide and elevating the building. How did you cope with that?
This is a really awful thing to say because I think it's completely wonderful here, but you've sort of left civilization, haven't you? You've got to the edge of the world, and you can do what you want.
How much did you end up spending in the end? Or what was the budget?
We certainly didn't meet Marcus's intended £100,000 budget, let's say that.
Were we a little bit out?
We were
or
quite a bit out.
We were quite a bit out. Sort of not, can't touch it out?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we did end up with quite a sort of finely crafted, high-spec, nicely detailed house. And then we spent again to raise it up off the ground, support it on sand, and cantilever it.
I'm just putting another zero end at each one of those sentences.
I'll leave it with you.
Okay, all right. I'll draw my own conclusions. I absolutely love it. And obviously, the judges loved it as well.
I mean, I think we never really intended to enter it for any prizes. I mean, but I think once we'd built it, it sort of dawned upon us that actually it is quite an extraordinary thing that we've done.
And the idea that this nice little house could be recognised as, House of the Year would be really extraordinary and unexpected, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, I wish you luck with it. The design of this building really does stand out for me. Lisa and Marcus have drawn upon the influences what surround them, plucking inspiration from military forts, natural materials and resident birds to create this wonderful, experimental collage of a building.
There are only 2 more spectacular homes to explore before we discover who's made it to the shortlist for the 2017 House of the Year. One of the greatest magical tricks that architecture can play is to lift us out from where we are, to mentally transport us from, say, a grubby urban environment and take us to another beautiful place that is literally otherworldly. Seaside architecture doesn't have to be constrained by geography. The most imaginative of us can bring the seaside anywhere.
And that's what our next house does magnificently.
This programme is all about coastal architecture in the 21st century. And yet, I find myself in North London walking up a hill, and that's because there is a man who, for years, has been determined to build his seaside house here.
Weird, wonderful, and quite at odds with its surroundings, Sixwood Lane stands out like a perfectly executed sculptural sore thumb. It's home to interior designer Sally Cox and architect Mike Russum, a man whose work follows an unconventional path. The house rises out of its 7-metre-wide driveway site in one of North London's most exclusive neighbourhoods.
Hello.
Hi. Good to see you. I'm Mike Russell.
Pleased to meet you, Mike. Hi.
Hi, Kevin. Lovely to meet you.
And you. And thanks very much for inviting me in, or round.
Yeah.
I mean, round. The first thing that strikes me, it is radical, which is very enjoyable, but there's a strong nautical flavour to the building, isn't there, in the detailing?
Yes.
This is a kind of mystery vessel that's arrived. I think we try and deliver something joyous that's beyond the normal expectation.
Let's embark.
The judges compared the house to a ship run aground in suburbia. The roof is an upturned hull. Its windows are portholes. Even the entrance is up a gangplank. In the basement of this 4-storey building, 2 bedrooms are anchored into the garden. Above that, on the upper deck, are an entrance hall, a studio, bathroom, and an elegant staircase that sweeps up into the elliptical living area. Here, Mike has formed a unique kitchen dining space, and it's all topped off by a dazzling glazed winter garden. For sheer originality and brilliance, it deserves its place on the long list.
You'll have to come up and see our living space up here.
Oh, wow, this is a staircase straight out of HMS Belfast. Oh, man alive. Good heavens. Oh, this is completely remarkable. It doesn't feel like a building at all. Oh, I'm in a spaceship now. I thought it was sort of a naval vessel, that this building would float away. But I see now it's sort of designed for takeoff more than, you know, anything else. It's incredible.
The judges were impressed by the way modern living has been totally reimagined. The hall contains a lighthouse. The windows are straight off a boat, and the balcony juts out like the prow of a ship. The only rectangular rooms are the basement bedrooms, which flow out into the landscaped garden. Building something like this could not have been easy.
Tell me what the major hurdles were.
Well, the principal one always is getting planning consent. We find the planners seek a replication of normality, even if it's the most mundane, poor quality building stock. They just want a facsimile of it.
Yeah.
Getting planning took over 2 years by appeal. That took £30,000 out of our budget. It's taken longer than we would hope.
When did you start work in the ground? Which year?
Oh, I don't remember now.
Which century?
It was this century.
Which decade?
It was.
I don't remember.
I'd have to go and. But it's taken a long time.
Well, exactly, because it's
like
clearly long enough for you to have forgotten exactly where.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
The entire process took 12 years. Building a surreal modern townhouse in a leafy conservation area on a narrow plot was never going to be easy. It's not just the design that's unconventional, the method of construction was just as demanding. The main body of the house was prefabricated off-site using boat-building techniques and then craned into place. And of course, this arduous project succeeded in aggravating many of the local residents.
Of course you must pooh-pooh all that's fresh and new and declare it crude and mean, for art stopped short at the cultivated court of the Empress Josephine. And that is, of course, from Gilbert and Sullivan's operetta Patience. But it really does summarize the reaction of an awful lot of people to the idea that we should have this very original, very imaginative building in Wood Lane.
We've lived here since 1970, and some people think the house is hideous, some people think it's interesting. It's a matter of taste.
The actual building phrase took years and was a genuine blight on the neighborhood because it really was pretty awful.
I think it really reminds me of like a spaceship that's just kind of landed in a little gap. I can see why people wouldn't like it because it isn't something that goes with the area.
Well, I've had the hors d'oeuvre and I've had, I think, probably the main course, but I'm sure there's pudding, isn't there?
Yeah.
It takes a while to drink all this in. All this absolutely reeks of craftsmanship. I'm beginning to understand the story of this thing now, a ramp to every level. Oh, wow. I thought this was a control room. It's not. It's a sculpting space and a lounge area.
Yes. With
And it's
fantastic
rather nice. You
views.
get,
Isn't it just? Oh, you're right up here in the canopy. It's like a treetop house up here, isn't it?
this extent of south-facing glazing that gets very hot in here. So that's a mechanism which lifts the circular lantern. Do you want to see it operate?
Yeah, I'd love to.
I mean, at the
yeah.
moment,
I'm expecting it to make a real Wallace and Gromit noise.
so if we do this, you'll see. So now It's coming down. It's very slow, but you can see by that mechanism there, that's got a kind of magic eye on it that stops it grinding its way down into the timber drum.
This is quite triumphant, isn't it?
At every turn, there is another little detail to delight and intrigue. And Mike, a man after my own heart, has built a glorious man cave at the end of the garden.
So in an age when buildings try and disguise what they are and what they do in the pursuit of some kind of sleek ambiguity, this building wears its heart and its machinery on its sleeves. So here, for example, are the heating intakes here and vents here for blowing out here. Here are the sound speakers, the landing lights, and in here, the controls for the rocket boosters. Why go to all the trouble in the end? Why go to this trouble? What drives you? What makes the difference here? What is worth it?
I think we're maximising the opportunity to enjoy how you live. So these are highly tuned spaces that deliver very special experiences.
You really feel very different. I do anyway. I feel very differently in the different spaces. It's quite inspirational as well.
Who wouldn't want to sail away in this ship of a building for the rest of their lives? It's imaginative, adventurous, challenging, sociable.
Now, any good building has a responsibility to us to look after us so that we can flourish in it. You know, that's what architecture is partly about. But very few buildings are there to really help the imagination to flourish as well, you know? And even fewer occupy that sacred place as well springs of inspiration. And this is one of them.
We're almost at the end of cruising our way through Britain's best aquatic homes. We've just got one more remarkable building to see before finding out which of these houses will be added to the 2017 shortlist.
It is one thing to build your house on the coast, near the sea. It is quite another to build it actually on the beach, exposed to everything that nature can throw at you, or over you, for that matter. However, it is possible to build a super robust house, one which is resistant to the forces of the sea, the salts, the tides and the wind. One from which you can sense, feel the power of the crashing waves, all from the comfort of your own armchair.
Seaside plots are notoriously difficult to come by. But as Damion discovered in East Lothian, on the east coast of Scotland, when you do get your hands on a beachy plot, the potential really opens up. After inheriting a bungalow, Archie and Tricia MacDonald had the dream location and the chance to build something really special.
This house isn't just by the sea, it's actually holding it back.
Built right onto the beach, the house anchors itself to the old, ragged sea wall. The elegant lines of the cladding against the rough, ancient stone help the building sing. It's this fine detailing that earned this house its place on the 2017 House of the Year long list.
Hi.
Hello, Damion.
Archie, how are you?
Nice to see you.
To meet you.
Hello, Damion.
Tricia.
Nice to
meet
see
you
you.
too. Just had a great little walk along the beach. The house just looks stunning set back there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah?
Come inside, see the inside.
Thank you.
This is a house in two parts. On one side, a flat-roofed bungalow contains a utility room, family bathroom, 2 bedrooms and a study. On the other, they added a fine, larch-clad extension, which encloses an extraordinary open-plan living area.
Oh, wow. I mean, what a space. I mean, this is just spectacular. Not many people get to just stand here with their morning cup of coffee and just watch the world go by.
You're like you're on holiday really all the time.
It's such an unusual location. I mean, how did you come across it?
Well, it's been in my family since the late 50s. My father was an architect and he was looking for a project, so he bought the house and physically rebuilt it himself. So he was an architect with dirt under his fingers.
The rare thing.
A rare thing. Yeah.
What Tricia and Archie inherited was a one-bed house with its back turned to the sea that faced into a courtyard. They approached local architect Matthew Johnson to give them an extra bedroom, bathroom and a sea view. But Matthew persuaded them to go for something altogether grander, giving Tricia and Archie cinemascope windows with polished concrete sills and sleek open-plan living. Rooms flow like the tide off a skylit corridor, and living spaces are gloriously turned around and opened up to the sea.
You kind of fall in love with all your projects as you do, and it's like really incredibly hard with this one to walk away and hand the keys back over. From my own personal experience, living by the sea has a real positive effect on how you live. I think it's important with the building to keep it as refined and as simple and as clean as possible, and then let the view do the talking.
The experience of living right on the beach is remarkable.
What's a good old Scottish storm like up here?
Quite spectacular.
Yes.
You're lying in your bed, it's high tide, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you hear this boom, boom, boom.
It's quite impressive.
On a good day, the sense of connection with the elements and the sea couldn't be closer.
Oh, wow. I mean, that just changes everything, doesn't it? Just magnificent.
It is.
It really is. As soon as you open this up, you just get all of the sound of the sea coming straight in. It fills the room.
And the smell.
And the smell. Oh, it smells, it really is. You're never going to get tired of that, really, are you?
No.
No. No.
I mean, these windows are just, I mean, they're magnificent. But what was it like when you walked in there for the first time and actually saw the scale of that opening and what you were actually capturing?
To stand in that space, just a red steel frame, framing the view with a timely ship passing was just superb.
The care and attention that has gone into the exterior of this building really is quite remarkable. From the military precision of each of the large spacings, down to the flush rainwater goods, every single aspect of this house has been considered.
It may look idyllic now, but it wasn't a smooth voyage getting here. When Matthew and the team started work on the old stable block, they realized the rafters were rotten and the whole roof needed replacing. Beneath, there was worse news, that the building's walls were crumbling. Rather than just changing the layout of the rooms, Tricia and Archie had to start again and reconstruct the entire building from scratch. All of this added time and, of course, money to the project.
And all of these additional costs and delays, I mean, this is what you've sunk all the life savings into.
Yes, yeah. So that's how it went when things were liquidated that we weren't expecting to liquidate. And,
the architect.
This is it. This is it. Liquidate the architect.
Luckily for Matthew, that didn't happen, and their collective reward was being longlisted for House of the Year.
The thrill of this house is how Tricia, Archie and Matthew have worked together to take a one-bedroom unit with its back to the sea and reposition it to open up these incredible cinematic views. The sea just isn't on their doorstep anymore. It's in their kitchen, it's in their lounge, and through this piece of architecture, it's in their lives.
We've seen South Street, a rusty industrial riverside box. Ness Point, a rippling clifftop castle. Red Shank, a house masquerading as a bird. Sixwood Lane, an upturned ship on a hill. And Edinburgh Road, a Scottish pimped-out beach hut. A diverse and handsome bunch.
So, 5 beautiful watery offerings. The question is, Which of them have the RIBA judges decided to put through to the shortlist?
The head of the jury is architect Deborah Saunt. She's here to give us the results.
So, Deborah, what have you shortlisted from this category?
The first is Ness Point, all the way down in Dover, with this killer view that no photograph ever does justice to. And this house completely grasps it. And we discovered, much to our delight, that this was the only house that really looked at open plan living, both in its summer delightful mode, ha-ha, and then the reality of a British winter. And imagine it here when you've got the storm raging across the channel. Here you can actually close down each of these rooms, so a kitchen that's currently open can become isolated, a dining room, a living room, and you really can sort of close down the house, which is tremendous.
There's an extraordinary glamorous quality to those curving shapes.
Well, we like this as well because when you're an architect, you're told curves are expensive, but this was one of the cheapest houses on the list per square metre. So they really looked at the technical kind of capacity of a building to be sort of sinuous and interesting, but not expensive. So I learned something going to this house, which was great.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Oh, well, Logan will be really happy. It is such an amazing location, so if we manage to amplify the character of that location, that's great. But it makes all that effort worthwhile.
So now, a second project then, shortlisted in this category.
We have, after lots and lots of debate, Wood Lane made it onto the list. It's so idiosyncratic, it's just a joy to go and visit.
I just thought the place was part seaside house, part Jules Verne balloon or spaceship or something.
In its form, it is out of this world. I mean, it's not trying to be a good neighbour in that deeply contextual way that good, well-behaved architects follow. Yeah. It is a world unto itself, and it's almost as though it's a kind of craft that sets sail, that it's making its own journey. The way it was made, wow. That floating space for making and thinking, I mean, I didn't see anywhere else when we visited that matched that kind of ethereal quality. It was extraordinary.
It's wonderful.
It's fabulous news, fabulous. Open a bottle of bubbly.
So, the undulating white Ness Point and fantastical Sixwood Lane join Shorm House and Caring Wood on the shortlist. Over the next 2 programmes, we'll show you more of the long list, reveal the rest of the shortlisted homes, and in the final programme, discover here on Channel 4 the winner of the RIBA House of the Year 2017.
The homes that we live in can be key to our well-being. The architect Bertold Lubetkin, who built some of the finest housing in the country, understood that. He believed that everyone deserved to live in buildings of real quality. In fact, he quit architecture when councils started trying to water down what he was doing. Lubetkin retired and became a pig farmer rather than build anything mediocre, because he knew what a difference architecture can make to people's lives. He was spot on.
Next time, homes in the countryside. 4 groundbreaking and exciting rural houses that are changing the way we define country life.
Wow, it really is like a childhood fantasy come to life.
Every year, the most beautiful, inventive and inspirational new homes in the country go head-to-head in a competition organised by the Royal Institute of British Architects to find the best house in Britain. And we're about halfway through our nationwide tour of the finest new homes for 2017 and about to explore a handful more, any of which could win.
So far on our tour of the long list, we've seen homegrown local houses,
beautiful tiles, made down the road.
And some magical waterside wonders.
Wow, this is very exciting. Bit of theatre.
Absolutely.
Which, like all this year's remarkable buildings, fire the imagination.
And I can simply waft to the bed in my nightdress.
All of which are delightful, inventive, and distinctive in their own way.
Oh, I'm in a spaceship.
This time, we're looking at 4 more buildings, all rural.
You've got a great big, lumpy, bumpy wall.
That's where the cows eroded the wall over time.
Very beautiful views, which the building just grabs.
At the end of the programme, we'll find out which of these fine homes have been shortlisted by the judges.
Everybody's just been bowled over by these unexpected qualities.
Then, in the final episode, we'll discover who has won one of the most celebrated prizes for residential architecture, the 2017 House of the Year.
It's always exciting and a privilege to be invited into a secret world, isn't it? To be able to snoop around other people's homes and to see inside some of Britain's most extraordinary houses. So for the next hour, just imagine what it would be like to live in some of these places.
So far in this series, 4 great pieces of architecture have made it onto the shortlist. Shoreham House in Northumberland, Caring Wood in Kent, Ness Point near Dover, and Sixwood Lane in North London. In this episode, we're looking at homes set in our most precious of assets, our rural landscape. Joining me are L Decorations Editor-at-Large, Michelle Ogundehin.
Amazing.
And architect Damion Burrows.
Oh, wow. You do not expect this when you see the house from the outside.
Rural homes have long been associated with farms, barns, and traditional cottages. But that's all changing now.
Enter the modernist rural home. Enter a new word, completely alien and unknown in the muddy countryside, glamour.
On Dorset's Isle of Purbeck, nestled in the hills, is our first house on the long list.
You know, if you move to the seaside to live, maybe to retire, you'll have the choice of living in a bungalow or a bungalow. That's it. And this is a bungalow.
The Quest is a sleek, gravity-defying bungalow, a statement in concrete, wood and glass, in the modernist tradition that takes the idea of single-storey living to a new, exciting level.
What a way to arrive.
It's the result of a 20-year search for the ideal plot by its owners, film producer Charles Denton and his wife Penny.
Primarily, I wanted, and I think Penny too, wanted a site which would give us a peaceful setting and somewhere where we could build a house that could complement the extraordinary countryside we're sitting in. We wanted to build something special.
Well, they've certainly got that. A glorious 205 square metre house, daringly cantilevered over a delicate stone wall.
Hello.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much.
Nice to see you.
Charles, is that right?
Yes,
Penny, yeah?
I'm Penny.
Pleased to meet you. What an amazing arrival. The sweep in. And I do like your fantastic cantilever.
Isn't it good?
And when you get away from it, you can look at it from a distance. It really, really sits well.
Oh, come on then, let's have a...
Yes, have a look.
You've whetted my appetite now. Thank you. You go first.
That floating cantilever contains an entrance hall with a master bedroom suite at the front. Then there's an enormous kitchen and living area that take up the middle section. And the final third contains 2 studies plus guest bedrooms and bathrooms. This place has huge windows connecting the building to the valley to the south.
Gosh. Very beautiful views, which the building just grabs.
It's beautiful.
It is quite arresting, isn't it? It sort of does grab you.
I think that is one of the absolute main things that we wanted. You know, in our brief we said we wanted light.
The judges admired the pared-back simplicity of this 8-metre wide living area. That's very wide. Charles and Penny have one room for living in here, but if that gets too much, they can each escape to separate studies.
We insisted as part of the brief that we wanted to have a study each which couldn't communicate with each other, so we're sealed into 2 studies.
Do you have a lock on the door?
No, but we might think about that.
I'll lock him in.
I mean, he's sounding like a 14-year-old teenager to me, you know.
Yes.
Kind of
I must have my room.
Yes.
Frankly, there's enough space here for everyone.
Snug.
And at every turn, something to delight. There are beautiful bedrooms spiraled away off the main living area. Meanwhile, the kitchen holds some hidden surprises.
So, if you'd like to open the door and have a look.
There's another door.
There's another door.
It's a larder.
It's a larder.
It's brilliant. Bit of produce, wine, good to keep it at a cool temperature. Brilliant thing to have.
It's so perfect because everybody's tricked. Nobody knows. I love it.
The quest couldn't be more different to the house that was previously on the site. An old bungalow, which Charles and Penny knocked down to build their new £750,000 house. Only then to discover a disused quarry underneath.
The builders drove a large, heavily laden dumper truck in there, and it suddenly opened up as a hole. But the hole is easily got rid of by a couple of truckloads of foamed concrete pumped into it.
And there was a little extra cost, of course.
There might well be.
Concrete's not just in the ground, it's on display throughout the building.
Judging from the enormous slab visible at the outside and the enormous lid, I imagine that this is not a timber frame building. This is built out of concrete.
And also staying on those columns. Those are the magic columns.
Are they steel?
Those are very refined, sophisticated concrete with stainless steel inner.
Remarkable.
The impossibly thin columns of concrete are reinforced with steel fibres, an idea championed by the architect Magnus Strom, who's also responsible for that cantilever.
So this cantilever, this great lump of concrete here, how does this work?
So the idea is that if you want to create a cantilever like this and we just have a single plane like this, it's not going to be very strong. So if you jumped on this, you'd probably break it.
Yeah. So how have you done this?
What we did was that we had a couple of internal walls.
Also in concrete?
Yes, in concrete. So they then also connect to the roof slab. So when those two connect together, that becomes a space beam, and that suddenly becomes very stiff.
Suddenly becomes a box.
So the beam becomes that.
A giant concrete I-beam with a chunk cut out the middle.
Exactly.
Can I let go of this? I can. No, see, look, there it is. It's doing its job.
Yeah.
A massive vat of yet more concrete was poured on site and buried underground beneath the guest bedrooms to balance the cantilever, keeping the whole thing wondrously suspended.
Now, I love this very elegant, simple idea. The ability of several hundred tons of heavy concrete to apparently defy the laws of physics. I mean, we're standing underneath a 6-metre cantilever unsupported. There's something kind of sort of superhuman about it, you know?
I'm not sure it's superhuman, but I think that one of the strengths of the building is, of course, that it's got a very big, strong, bold idea, yet it's very, very simple. And I think it's that simplicity that is captivating.
This building is one delicious concrete sandwich garnished with a spread of polished local Purbeck stone.
It's got patterns and, you know, it's alive, isn't it, with different textures and so on.
Yeah.
And you find outcrops of stone all over the place here. And to have it here now, it just feels right for the whole location.
The stone was sourced locally from Trev Haysom, a 10th-generation quarryman.
Purbeck stone's quarried in the southeastern corner of Dorset, the so-called Isle of Purbeck.
Sediment, fresh water, fossils and shells compacted over millions of years make this strong, versatile limestone. It takes a polish, so it's been used for everything from early paving stones to decorative carving.
I suppose the high point was Henry III using it lavishly in Westminster Abbey. Purbeck stones became highly prestigious.
The stone was hand-selected in the quarry, then cut to size and polished for Charles and Penny's home.
This is as the fireplace slabs in the Quest, except they were textured to a different finish. Same rock.
This house proudly showcases what it's made of, stone and concrete, demonstrating an honesty that impressed the judges and attracted some local attention.
I've been watching this house being developed since the day they broke ground, and I think it is absolutely exceptional. I just love how it implements itself into nature. The timber and the construction, there's such sensitivity to the trees and to the nature around it, and it's just totally glorious.
One of the reasons we chose Magnus was the style of houses that he builds. He builds houses which are flooded with light. This house is the lightest, most life-affirming building I've ever lived in.
There is a wonderful honesty about this building. What you see is what you get. It is made of what is visible. But don't mistake that honesty for simplicity, because bound up in this very well, clearly laid out house, there are all kinds of magical ideas. Ideas of rejuvenation, regeneration, the idea of connection to place through the materials that come from this earth that's almost subliminal.
We've seen one jewel of a rural home. Next up on the long list, a magical treehouse.
It really is like a childhood fantasy come to life.
And we find out what it's like to live in a winning home.
Everybody has his own life, but we share many things, and this is wonderful.
Very often, what you build is restricted, governed by its context, by where it is. And so one pointy roof in Surbiton leads to another. However, take away the built context, throw off the shackles of neighbours, and you are free to draw rich inspiration from elsewhere, from landscape, trees, squirrels and badgers.
In Dorset, a private woodland has inspired our second building on the long list. Michelle went to explore the fantastical creation designed to bring out the playful in all of us.
Wow, it really is like a childhood fantasy come to life.
The enchanting Woodsman's Treehouse is owned and was built by Guy Mallinson.
Wood is such a fantastic material, and I spent my entire life working with wood in one form or another. And so, yeah, the treehouse is really a celebration of what wood can do.
This is the embodiment of Guy's passion for wood. A 35 square metre treehouse made from Douglas fir, cedar, larch and oak on stilts of sweet chestnut.
Amazing.
Magically accessed across a rope bridge to a submarine airlock door.
How fabulous is this?
Michelle, welcome.
Hello. I love the submarine door. The drama starts, and I even got a red carpet as well.
Well, this is quite compressed, this space. So you come in through the compression chamber and then into the main space thereafter.
Once through the decompression chamber lobby, with a toilet tucked in behind it, the building opens out into a cylindrical living area, flanked by a bedroom and bathroom. There's a wraparound balcony containing a spiral staircase leading to a rooftop sauna and jacuzzi.
This is so much more luxurious than I imagined it would be. There is a real sense of escapism. It all feels quite unexpected.
Yes, and I think that particularly that entrance is very small and it's all quite like this, so you're meant to get that wow factor when you open up into this space.
I mean, this is high spec. I mean, look at that bath.
The building is packed with fun. I can't get over that rooftop spa with an outdoor hot tub and sauna. Below it, there's a deck with a pizza oven and a wondrous slide to the forest floor. This place is studded with distractions, like a glamorous woodland funfair.
It looks like a sort of theatrical set, or you expect someone to walk in and start doing a play.
Yeah.
It has a very sort of theatrical feel to it. And so there's lots of sort of tricks on the eye. For example, we've sloped the walls in to exaggerate the perspective.
Then you've got all these wonderful little architectural sort of cutouts that give you like glimpses of the environment around you.
Yes, I think there are surprises. I think that's just little surprises everywhere. In the floor here, we've got a window, and it was just a frame. We looked down and said, that is such a fantastic view.
Yeah.
We've got to keep it. It's an extraordinary feeling standing here looking at the stream below.
Well, it's kind of fun because it's so unexpected, but it's also exactly right because it is so brilliant to be able to look and see what's going on beneath here.
The RIBA judges enjoyed the way this building frames views of its woodland setting, the most spectacular of which is of the adjacent ancient oak tree.
But, I mean, that's it to me. The tree is everything. To be this high up the tree and to be able to look at the mosses and the ferns so closely, it's just so massive and beautiful.
The treehouse is built around the tree, but is completely separate from it. An ingenious design by the architect Keith Brownlee.
Tree houses generally kill trees, so it's built in respect of the trees, to look at the trees rather than to stress the trees.
I mean, what were the architectural challenges for you then?
Well, trees have roots, which is not very convenient, so it means that you have to put your foundations where they can go, not where you want them to be.
To avoid the tree roots, Keith designed a crisscross web of supports driven into the ground at angles. Heavy machinery couldn't get to the remote boggy site, so the whole of this enchanting building had to be delivered and made by hand, including its apparently chunky wooden walls.
You'll notice that all the walls appear to be very thick, and they appear to be solidly made from the same thing on the inside as the outside, but that's all play.
The wall of logs is in fact a clever illusion. They're just cladding, short timbers stacked up against an insulated fire and waterproof structure behind them. The job of constructing this deceit fell to Guy's woodcraft friends and family.
Me and my little brothers and some friends were in charge of the logs on the front of the tree house. It was like 4 weeks' work, I think in the end, about 10,000 logs. It was proper greenwood work we were doing, so jaw knifing and making all these logs and then fitting them together. So, yeah, it's a lot of work. Our hands were like one huge callus at the end of it. It was pretty brutal. Seeing it done was just worth it all, because I think they looked really amazing in the end, I think.
In a few years' time, it will be silver grey with greenery growing on it. I mean, the log wall is designed to have mosses and ferns, and it will become even more part of the wood as it hopefully improves with age.
Built with passion and designed to last, it's perhaps not surprising that the treehouse came with a hefty price tag.
It is quite over the top.
Can I ask how much it cost?
Yes, the cost of the treehouse was 150,000.
Right.
It's a huge amount of money.
Yes.
But, we set out to make it special. And it is in the middle of a wood, so just by default, building in the middle of a bog is a very expensive project.
This woodsman's treehouse is a real celebration of contemporary design meets traditional craftsmanship. It has elements of richness, escapism, even fantasy. In short, it's quite magical, which is not a word you often use in architecture.
The buildings in this series are hoping to win the coveted prize that is the RIBA House of the Year. And to find out what makes a winning contemporary design, let's take a look at the enigmatic Maison L in France.
In years gone by, European architects could enter the House of the Year award. On the outskirts of busy urban Paris is this. Maison L, winner in 2012. 5 towers joined together to form one home. They're all a modern addition to an existing 18th century building. Owned by PR consultant Isabelle Tierman and her financier husband, Yves.
We decided to extend the house in order to have a big family space with independence and also common life. We have 4 sons, so 4 towers for the sons and 1 for the couple.
you want to keep them until 80 years old, they have to have their own space. And they can come with a girlfriend, and after maybe with a wife, and maybe after maybe with a wife and kids.
We want the sons to be with us the longest.
The 5 flat-roofed towers, one for each child and one for mum and dad, won the RIBA award because they creatively accommodate modern family life. To connect the individual towers, architect Christian Potgieser dug deep.
So it's sloping down there and here. So we are 1.2 meters in the soil, in the original level already here.
The subterranean area has angular pockets of living space linking the house together,
It's a geometry for contemporaneous family.
from which spring the 5 structures spiraling upwards.
On one of the parts of it, you have this, let's say, you can understand it as a bathroom, but it's part of the staircase. So it's a staircase where you take your shower.
There's no need for doors, as the tower corners provide privacy. And a light-filled bedroom takes up the top floor of each tower.
You are not really in the countryside. You are in the suburbs of Paris, but you don't see anything.
Sometimes you are working in your space and one other is with his friends and one other is with the grandma playing cards. So everybody has his own life, but then we share many things and this is wonderful.
Ambition, craftsmanship, vision are just some of the things a building needs to become the house of the year. We've got 2 more beautiful rural homes to explore before we find out which of them are on the 2017 shortlist.
Next up, a home crafted from an old cattle barn.
Oh, this is majestic.
And we'll be looking at cutting-edge design in everyday houses.
It's just so unusual. I have not walked into another building that's so entirely made of wood.
Anyone who's been stuck behind a tractor on a small road in the middle of Devon knows that rural life creeps at its own slower, quieter pace, you know? It's about 7 miles an hour. Okay, so building is also a slow cook business as well. Except that in the countryside, architects are breaking new ground, literally, and challenging tradition.
Our third house on the long list is hidden deep in rural Devon, a new building with a story that dates back centuries.
So there's a farmhouse and some barns. This has to be it, doesn't it? Looks like it's been there for a while, or at least bits of it have.
This is Cob Corner. Once a ruined linhay barn, meaning lie-in hay, it used to house cattle below with their feed and the hay above. Now it's been rejuvenated, rising like a phoenix from the ashes by architect David Shepherd and his wife Sally, a GP. It's a rural gem of a home, in absolute keeping with its place.
I used to play not far from here, and it's still the same as when I was a child of 7. It hasn't really changed much. In fact, I think has had a great influence on me being an architect for a start.
Hello.
Hello.
You must be Sally.
Yes, welcome to our home, Gavin.
Thank you very much. Thank you. David, this is the fruit of your labours. I mean, this is remarkable. In a most fabulous setting. I mean, a really quite beautiful valley. Very, very green.
From the remnants of the 17th century cattle shed, David has inventively produced a 3-bedroomed home and a studio for his architectural practice. The barn's ground floor contains the kitchen, dining and master bedrooms, with a living room above. The tractor shed to the left is now David's studio, and the remains of an outbuilding to the right have been transformed into 2 further bedrooms with bathrooms.
So, from the vestibule, ooh! I expected this to be actually taller ceiling, more divided and somewhat less cottagey, but this is very charming.
The kitchen and dining rooms stretch the full length of the former 18-metre cattle shed. And where animals once ambled in from the fields, a glazed and shuttered wall provides views of the valley. The RIBA judges admired the way David's conjured a home fit for modern living out of the derelict barn shell, while retaining so much of what the building used to be.
You've got a great big lumpy bumpy wall.
That's right, yeah.
It's like a model of the moon on your kitchen wall. What is it?
That's where the cows eroded the wall over time, eating their food.
This is physical erosion of the wall by animals.
Yeah.
Rubbing against it. Remarkable.
Itching.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This old barn wall is made of cob, an ancient building material made up of earth, aggregate, water and straw, all mixed together and packed down to make walls. It's as rustic as you can get, and a traditional technique in Devon. At Cob Corner, the 300-year-old wall is half a metre thick. A simple coat of new lime wash brought it back to life.
When we had the farm around for dinner, he recognised this little
The hole
hole
there.
here, which is where Snowdrop, the cow, used to lick.
Is that cow's tongue shape? That one there?
Yeah. And he said...
You've kept it?
Yeah, he couldn't believe we kept it.
Presumably there was just a nice sort of salty bit of wall here that she could just leave away.
Nutrients,
I presume.
Yeah.
Wow. Brilliant that you've kept it.
They've not just kept the wall, they've placed it centre stage, lumps, bumps and all. One of the many remnants of the barn's origins all over this house. From the traditional piers made from stones originally gathered from the nearby stream, to the scissor trusses in the hayloft upstairs, now the living room.
Oh, this is majestic. Very open, very long and big. Isn't it lovely? Why is this open, this section here?
Well, it's more of a memory of when they used to bring the straw down to the feed.
OK, so they would just sweep straw towards the opening, it would drop down into a manger below.
That's correct, yeah.
Only the barn's original openings have been glazed, so the windows are all low up here.
So that explains why you can't see out any of these windows.
That's right, it's a purely functional.
It's only when you come to sit down... Oh, yeah, look, look, look. That's entirely justifiable. No, I can understand now. The building is inviting you to sit down.
David saw beauty in this crooked old barn, even with all the difficulties it presented.
When my mother saw this barn, she said, David, what on earth have you brought a ruin for? And I said, just wait and see.
Over 14 years, he has lovingly stripped back the ruined building. He excavated the cow dung to lay a new floor, rebuilt the crooked walls, and repaired the misshapen oak roof by hand. No easy task, given the higgledy-piggledy nature of the place.
So this pier doesn't quite appear to line up with that pier and the end of the building. In fact, this plate sort of cranks off at an angle. Meantime, all of these trusses hit this wall plate, but this one's just resting on it. This one is down, cut into it by about 3 inches. This one, oh, a tiny little notch here. This one here, much lower. And that's the point. You know, this building, although it's level, I mean, I'm standing on a horizontal floor, actually, the old barn sloped down the hill. It followed the contour of the place. If you build new, you can build efficiently and you can build straight. If you build old, then you have to build expensive and wonky.
Luckily for David, he had an expert carpenter on hand. His brother Terry did all the difficult woodwork in the house, like the timber stairs.
Originally, it was green oak. So in other words, it's literally a tree, a growing tree, and they are really, really heavy. So manhandling them around was quite difficult because we have them delivered up the top of the road and literally, well, threw them in, really, because they were probably 3/4 a ton each, but really easy to work with when it's wet.
Every piece of this wooden puzzle is held together with axe-cut timber pegs. And Terry's craftsmanship is everywhere. Handmade wooden blinds and handcrafted doors. This building is a celebration of traditional approaches inside and out.
From my house, from upstairs, I can see it. I think it's a beautiful house, and it's okay with the environment and the area around. The kind of house you just turn and look at it. It is nice, yeah, I like it.
The timber screen over the windows hides the glazing behind a seemingly agricultural framework of wood and shadow, providing shade and a hide from which to watch wildlife. all from £250 worth of reclaimed hardwood.
So 250 quid for the timber, which sounds cheap for what it is, but how much then to put it all up?
It was £11,000, which at the time sounded like an awful lot of money, but I love it because it just takes away from the vastness of the glass.
It's true that from the road, you look up here and what you see are the slats. It looks like a barn.
And it's very beautiful for it.
It's very beautiful for it.
But all this timber over the windows, you might think, would obscure the view.
Sitting here, I can tell you, as I just cast my eye around, I can join together the dots. That my imagination fills in the little bits I can't see, and I get a complete view of the landscape. That's the imagination for you. That's this building for you.
The timber screen isn't the only connection made with the surrounding environment. It's also powered by the sun, harvests rainwater, and is coated with a flat roof of eco-friendly sedum.
I'm a country boy, there's no doubt about that, and I'm very passionate about where I live, and I think that is important when I design my buildings. It is about the landscape and how you place the building within it.
All good new buildings respond to people and to place. However, this building speaks of people and place, and also its own history. It speaks of time. Look at it, eh? What a fantastic story it tells. It's like a three-dimensional picture book.
Such a rich narrative is common across many of the houses on the long list, which are packed with invention.
Watching this programme, you'd be forgiven for thinking that many of these houses are the preserve of the few, the elite.
But let me reassure you, the ideas pioneered here benefit the rest of us. They can improve all our homes. Michelle Ogundehin went to visit a new housing estate, Carrowbreck Meadow, outside Norwich. Just under half of these homes are part-owned by the council under shared ownership, making them affordable to buy on an income of less than 35 grand, all achieved with award-winning design.
How did you develop what they'd look like?
Well, we sort of built upon a kind of Norfolk vernacular. So we were looking at Norfolk barns and doing something based on that kind of aesthetic. So it's clean lines, simple palette of materials, which felt fitting for this kind of rural environment.
This ambitious housing estate has won 2 RIBA awards.
Michelle, nice to meet you.
Each home is crafted with larch cladding and elegant proportions.
But what was it about the house that really drew you to it in the first place?
The initial fact was the way it looked. You see how nice it is, and then you walk in and you see how well it's finished, the attention to detail. There's so many things about it that were far beyond what we expected from a new build.
So it really overturned your perceptions about housing estates?
Oh, straight away, yeah.
This is considered architecture that makes the very best of where it is, carving magnificent views out to the landscape with large, well-placed windows. It offers delight and is immensely practical. The elongated roof shape isn't just for show. Inside, there are generously sized bedrooms.
Oh, wonderful. It's so nice to have all this space above your head.
This actually is the front of the house as well, which faces the sun. So another thing they've thought about is if it gets too hot during the day, you've got these special blinds that you can put down so that the sun doesn't cook your bedroom during the day.
It costs just £3 a month to heat this 2-bedroom house. It's designed to passive house standards, meaning that it's super insulated and airtight and uses minimal energy.
It's nice to live somewhere that has been well thought out, well designed, and it's actually now a privilege to live somewhere that's had that forward planning involved in it.
I'm so impressed with the level of detail here, from the metal shutters on the outside of the windows to the wooden pergola that shade them from the sun, or the black cladding that references the local barns. They've really thought about how to sit these houses into the environment.
In North London, on Barrett's Grove, is another housing scheme that's won an RIBA National Award and was up for this year's Sterling Prize for the UK's best new building. This block of flats uses the latest wood technology to build super efficiently. The structure is made entirely of cross-laminated timber.
is just so unusual. I have not walked into another building that's so entirely made of wood. You know, the structure, the supporting structure is wooden. The brick facade is really just a weatherproofing. The fact that everything has been left completely wooden inside, it just does have that warmth to it, that personality.
By using giant timber panels bolted together, the core structure was built in just 8 days.
Certainly if you use Barrett's Grove as a model for being able to bring down construction costs and create a pleasing internal and external aesthetic to housing, it could be applicable to creating affordable housing as well as large-scale private housing.
Both Barrett's Grove and Carrowbrick Meadow show how buildings for all of us can benefit from the experimental ideas pioneered in one-off houses. We've got one more trailblazing rural house to see from this year's long list of homes.
Oh, wow. I mean, you do not expect this when you see the house from the outside.
Before we find out which of them the RIBA judges have shortlisted for House of the Year.
In this programme, we've seen 3 beautiful projects, all of which, like rare breed sheep, push at the barbed wire and baler twine boundaries of rural architecture. Just one more strong, shaggy and very different contender to go before we discover which has most caught the judge's imagination.
The final house in our rural category makes its mark in Scotland. It's the new house of Auchengreen. A farm-like group of buildings that make up one large home. Damion travels to windswept North Ayrshire to see it.
As a piece of architecture, the proportions of this building are visually so pleasing, but it's almost like it's trying to throw you off the scent that it's actually a house. It looks like it could be an agricultural shed, even something to do with aviation.
Disguised in standing seam zinc with shuttered windows, just like a barn, this contemporary home is arranged as a little group of buildings. A modern 2-storey house sits at the centre. It has an open-plan kitchen, dining and living room on the ground floor, and 2 guest bedrooms, some extra living space and a library above. The master bedroom suite sits in a separate building, connected by a glazed lobby. Then there's a pair of outbuildings at the back, containing 2 more bedrooms and some storage. It was built for 2 long-distance runners, retired GP Dr. Mike Law and his wife, Sally.
We've had a pretty outdoor life, commencing with road running in the 1980s, and neither of us have stopped since. The longest we've ever not run is probably about 10 days, and that was because we were doing a bike tour.
Their passion for the outdoors inspired this £600,000 house in its remote rural location. With a covered passageway, traditionally known in Scotland as a pend, leading to the entrance.
Walking up along that drive and seeing the house there in the background is really impressive.
It stands out exactly as much as it needs to. That's always been my take on it.
The cladding of the building, zinc as a material, was that something you wanted from the start?
No, because we wanted it just on the roof, but then we were showing the plans with it all over, and I thought that might be too much, but it's relieved by the shuttering.
A phrase which our architect once used was, "Your house will stand like a sculpture in the landscape." I think that's pretty true.
New House may seem heavy and agricultural, a little introspective, but inside it is light and bright, and the landscape is around every corner.
Oh, wow. I mean, you do not expect this when you see the house from the outside. Everywhere you walk, there are just framed views. It's such a light, airy space to be in.
Ceilings are high, which means windows can also be high. There are skylights too, to drink as much light in from the Scottish skies. And if you have views, why would you not want to see them?
It's quite a special location. How did you first come across the site itself?
We used to run round this way from where we used to live and knew what the view was like. And when it came up for sale, we took a walk up and it looked as if it should have had a house on it.
They commissioned Anne Nisbet, who designed the house like a farmyard, a cluster of buildings arranged around a 3-sided courtyard.
As you can see, it's quite windy on the site, and we try to use the clusters to deal with some of the weather and climate issues on site to create these outdoor spaces.
When it's very blustery, the barn doors on the entrance can be closed to make a windbreak. The form of the house is inspired by local farm buildings, and when Anne discovered a farm called New House on an old Ordnance Survey map, it helped her secure planning permission on this sensitive site.
The process for getting consent is not straightforward, and in this particular case, what was clearly evident was the depth of research that had gone on to really understand the sense of place and develop a design from that.
The RIBA judges liked the way Anne took inspiration from local agricultural buildings and farms, designing a contemporary home to fit Mike and Sally's specific needs.
So it was really important to them, as they've got a big family, they've got 4 children and 4 grandchildren. So they wanted to make sure that they could accommodate all of the family, but that it still felt intimate enough for them to live here, just the 2 of them.
It looks like an incredibly social space. You
Yes.
can be cooking there, washing, people sat here, everybody enjoying the space together as a family.
Oh, it's excellent, and granddaughters can sit up on the stool and watch what you're doing.
This house takes account of every generation, and it's designed to look after Mike and Sally well into the future.
This whole space is eminently usable, no matter what the future holds in states of health and mobility.
So this was very much about designing a house that was specifically for your needs going through into the future.
Yeah.
This building treads a delicate line, asserting its presence in the landscape, but doing so with quietness and understatement. It is beguiling.
I can well remember when this room was still empty, I stood at the far end, looked back towards the kitchen, and I thought, we've nailed it. We've nailed it.
Mike and Sally have placed their absolute faith in Anne, who has designed and delivered a building which doesn't just provide for their needs, but it generously gives back to its landscape.
So that completes our tour of the UK's best new rural homes. The RIBA judging panel have looked hard at the buildings on the long list and have picked their favourites.
All the rural homes on the long list are intelligent and beautiful, and they all challenge and reinvent the idea of what it is to live in the country. But which of these 4 have made it onto the shortlist? The gravity-defying concrete box that is the Quest on the Isle of Purbeck. Dorset's fantastically playful woodsman's treehouse. Cob Corner, a handcrafted home carved from a ruined cattle shed. Or the Scottish zinc farmstead, New House of Auchengree. After much deliberation, the chair of the RIBA jury, Deborah Saunt, has the verdict. So, Deborah, you've shortlisted at least one house from this rural category, because we've got a model in front of us. What is it? Tell me about it.
We have. We shortlisted the Quest. It was technically extraordinary. Having this enormous cantilever over an area where you park your car and come upstairs, so brave and ambitious. Those slabs of concrete span effortlessly, and they're supported on the most extraordinary sequence of high-strength concrete columns. I thought they were steel when I looked before. So I found it a very rewarding house to actually visit in person. It was very, very comfortable. For these brave clients, it did everything that they wanted.
That's fantastic news. Well, thank you.
Wow,
that's fantastic. Oh, congratulations, and thanks for being such lovely, fantastic clients.
It's very nice that Magnus can get some recognition for the house he's built for us.
Well chuffed. Absolutely over the moon.
So, Deborah, you've got another shortlisted project from this category.
We have. We actually shortlisted a new house. This really was, and as it's presented by the model, a rural gem.
I mean, middle of nowhere.
This was super rural, and a very young architect, Anne Nisbet, she's looked at the way that buildings are built in that area, and she discovered these sort of farm typologies, and she's mimicked it, but in a completely 21st century way. It's just a fantastic one to visit.
Fantastic.
You're kidding.
I'm very glad for Anne, and we're very proud to be owners of this house.
There's some fantastic buildings in the shortlist, so we're just really pleased to be part of that shortlist as well.
So these two go forward to join watery Ness Point and Sixwood Lane on the shortlist, along with Shorm House and Caring Wood.
At a time when our rural land is under pressure and also blighted by poor developments, it's more important than ever to build sensitively and beautifully in our countryside. More important than ever to innovate and to question how we can build better and more appropriately for this century in our landscape. Now, all great architecture enhances its setting and enriches our understanding of place. All great architecture connects people to place and to each other. So we need more of it.
Next time, our final category, minimal pared-back homes.
Wow, it's like walking into a museum.
Before we discover who the winner is of House of the Year 2017.
It's going to be a tricky process, I think. It's going to be a long evening.
I've got a clear favourite, yeah.
Every year, the most beautiful, inventive and inspirational new homes in the country go head-to-head in a competition organised by the Royal Institute of British Architects to find the best new house in Britain.
We're on the last lap of our journey, visiting the wealth of extraordinary homes on the RIBA long list.
This is not what I expected.
We've seen houses that challenge and amaze.
I'm in a spaceship designed for takeoff.
That surprise and delight, all remarkable in their own way.
There's something kind of sort of superhuman about it.
So far, 6 have made it onto the shortlist.
That's fantastic news.
Can't believe this, it's just amazing.
Now we're looking at the final crop of houses in a group we've called minimal and modern.
Everything is kind of stripped, pared, pushed, hidden.
At the end of this programme, we'll see who gets the last remaining place on the coveted shortlist before discovering who the overall winner is.
There can be only one building lucky enough to be awarded the most celebrated prize for residential architecture in Britain, the 2017 House of the Year.
So far, the 6 shortlisted buildings for House of the Year have come from 3 of our loosely grouped categories. From homes that are inspired by water, Ness Point, a house that all seaside curves, and the surreal and delightful Sixwood Lane. From homes drawing on local traditions, the composed Shorm House, and rather wilder Caring Wood. And from our rural category, New House of Auchengree and The Quest in Swanage.
In this programme, we'll be looking at the most beautifully pared back projects on the long list in a category that I'm calling naked minimalism. It contains within it those houses which use the fewest materials crafted to the greatest possible effect, where polished concrete reigns supreme and colour is deliberately dialed down. All of which has the effect of showing off the raw, naked beauty of the finished building in the nude.
For our first minimal offering, I'm in suburban North London, where among Edwardian tree-lined streets, there's a new block on the block.
This next house is serious. It's from a serious architectural practice who specialise in memorials, monuments, in artist studios, gallery spaces and exhibitions. They're not to be trifled with, and neither is the house either. It's an example of minimal monumentalism or monumental minimalism, I don't know. It looks like the entrance to an Assyrian temple complex.
Highgate House is a complete reinvention of the suburban home. It may look like the brainchild of some Minecraft enthusiast, but this ode to brick is far more refined than first impressions suggest. At its heart lies a huge double-height entrance hall cum living room, from which all other rooms emanate. On the ground floor is a swimming pool, and across the hall, an open-plan kitchen, family room and separate dining room. On the first floor, via a grand gallery, are 5 bedrooms with 3 bathrooms. This assertive, verging on brutalist piece of architecture is home to Paul and Susanna, and it's on the site of Paul's previous family home.
You grew up here, is that right? Have I got that right?
About 35 years ago now. We, as a family, we've been
on
here.
this site?
On this site, yes.
So you took the decision to demolish a family home in which you'd grown up?
Yeah, father thought I was crazy, but
Yeah.
what do you know?
I think if I were your dad, I'd have a bit more to say.
I felt
He had a lot to say.
Yeah,
He had
huge
a lot to say.
responsibility about that as well, considering that all of a sudden what we're going to do is better be good.
Well, not just good, but better.
Yeah.
And inside, is it just as pure?
Well, maybe you
Can we
should have
find
a look.
Oh, yes. Gosh.
There are no frills here, no skirting boards or architraves. The choice of materials is limited, their use judicious, although frankly on an epic scale.
Wow. It's like walking into a museum. I mean, it's unlike many houses that have that great double height space and that magnificent view.
Well, we wanted height and we
You
got
got it.
height.
To the extent you can stand here and you can see the top of the trees.
Yes.
Not unlike the hall of a grand medieval house, this large social lobby space is the hub around which smaller, more intimate rooms are arranged, whether shared family spaces or more private bedrooms. Described all in the simplest of palettes, warm reddish brick and dark smoked oak.
Every material in this house took ages to pick.
But there are only about 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, but
I suppose that's the problem. In a way, to kind of reduce it down so that you get one universal wood finish or one universal floor or one universal brick, you know.
You're surprised how many different types of brick there are, you know, so it just goes on forever.
This place is so minimal, the everyday stuff of family life is tidied away. Actually, there's not much to suggest a family lives here at all.
Oh, beautiful. It's in quite a small kitchen, in quite a large room. Dining table.
That's what we have.
What happens when you bring 15 people round? Where do you eat then? Well, you've got a fold-down dining table. Oh, no, it's a fold-out room. This is good. It's like going to a restaurant and they take you into a private dining room, at the back for a special function. I'd like to be invited round, please.
I'm sure we can manage that.
Just as whole rooms are hidden behind this wall of wood, so are all the trappings of practical family life.
Is this another room? What is this?
This is like Narnia, isn't it?
Oh, right, OK, yeah.
So there is a TV.
There is a TV and
there are family photographs. I love that. So it's, you can sort of personalise and depersonalise it. I look around the room and everything is kind of stripped, pared, pushed, hidden.
it is. When morning comes, everything opens up. So start breakfast.
Still quite tidy, isn't it? Still quite tidy. Oh, what's in there?
Utility room.
It's a utility
and
room.
the other fridge.
Utility room. And cookery books, I can see, even from here. There's a big play here, isn't there, in this house, between public and private? You know,
Yeah.
whichever room you're in or space, there's an opportunity to close the door, open it up.
Everything has its place. It's so easy to live here.
Contrary to first impressions, this is a rich and fully inhabited house, although it is slow to reveal itself. It's proof that a family home can be formal and grand.
The entire building is full of these kind of large-scale, non-domestic experiences, the likes of which you normally find in, say, I don't know, a concert hall or in a contemporary museum.
Outside follows the same pared-back, ruthless approach as inside. There are no visible drain pipes or details. Even window frames are hidden. It's the strength of this design purpose that impressed the RIBA judges. That and the exploration of a single material, brick.
We really liked that idea that the house would seem as a solid form, a solid mass, and then the rooms are carved as halls inside, and the brick extends into the rooms.
Any reprieve from solid brick comes in the form of, well, perforated brick to provide glimpses of the world within and without. This building has the powerful presence you'd expect from an architect known for designing memorials.
A memorial needs to last generations. Its only reason for being is to stop people forgetting. Yeah. A house has a very different responsibility, yet we had conversations with this client about the idea that it might be here for generations, and how could we build it in such a way that it felt like it would stand the test of time.
Yeah. Have you built a legacy here? Is this something for
yes,
your
for
kids?
us and our family, yes.
It's for us and future generations.
That's it.
A building as solid as this will possibly outlive its traditional neighbours. So, what do neighbouring occupants make of this place?
I thought to myself, oh dear, you know, I'm not sure about this. It does look rather stark.
I found it an aggressive building to begin with, and it was pretty hostile. But now it's there in all its glory. It's a very elegant building, and it does the road proud.
I was converted, you know, and I was quite happy. I think they've got a swimming pool.
Highgate House is an emblem as much as a home. A place that suggests other buildings that are far more serious than a house. Paul and Susanna have bravely reinvented the suburban idea.
Allow me to tell you that this is an emotionally powerful building. It is fabulously monumental. It is beautifully resolved. And also, here's a word I don't use about houses very much. It is momentous.
We've 3 more pared-back homes to see.
Wow. I was not expecting this.
Before we discover the winner of House of the Year 2017.
You know, one of the 20th century's greatest architects, one of modernism's founding fathers, Le Corbusier, liked to take his clothes off. He was a nudist. Now, bizarre as that might seem, his lifestyle, of course, embodied the very principles of naked minimalism, having nothing unnecessary in your life, only what you truly need. A small towel for occasional use, for example. I might undo a button.
Our next offering is Hidden House. It's a shining example of those less is more principles. Built in the gardens of a converted Victorian school, it is a tiny single-storey home, completely hemmed in by all its neighbours. It's home to Selim and Iran, who moved to London from Istanbul and immediately recognised an opportunity.
We weren't necessarily looking to buy a plot. We just came across it on the internet. And we immediately thought, OK, this can be a project we could do, since we're both designers.
And how often do you find a plot in the middle centre of London?
Yeah.
It was a small gem.
The old building on the plot was a caretaker's shed, which they've replaced with a minuscule 72-square-metre home. that packs in an open-plan kitchen, living and dining room with 2 bedrooms and bathrooms. Small in stature perhaps, but big on invention, as architect Damion Burrows discovered.
Aaron, how are you?
Good.
Good to meet you. Celine.
Hi, Damion. You too.
You too.
Welcome. Let's do it.
Can I? Oh, wow. God, I was not expecting this. Look at the light. It's just absolutely flooding in. I mean, you've got these wonderful light wells.
They function as partitions to the space. As you can notice, it's sort of divided into 4 spaces, being kitchen, dining, living, and work. Where you don't have a window on the wall, you have a skylight. Where you don't have a skylight, you have a window. It's very smartly considered.
It should be. For such a small place, it's taken 3.5 years to design and build. But the result is a perfectly compact interior, finished with a precision verging on the obsessive.
Nothing is left to chance.
In true minimal style, the walls are lined with one material: oak. There are no frivolous details in sight. All the necessities of life are hidden away. If ever the makers of Swiss Army penknives built a home, it would be something like this.
Ah! So even everything like the toasters, the kettles, everything's kept out of sight. I think there's a bit of an organisation theme going on here, isn't there?
Perhaps.
Most neatly stacked Tupperware cupboard in the whole of London.
I mean, we're not weird people. It's just how we are.
Craftsmanship was one thing that appealed here to the RIBA judges. They also loved how this home is both light and yet doesn't feel overlooked by its neighbours. A tall order with so many roof lights.
Wow. This is a little bit Bond, isn't it?
Just a little.
This is great. But this house is full of holes. You've got skylights punched all over the roof. Is this really a private house?
The bedroom is done in such a way that nobody can really see in. That way, I wouldn't say we're exposed too much.
The judges also singled out the quality of the polished concrete, saying it was some of the best they'd ever seen. The high sheen, smooth finish is achieved by polishing or power floating concrete as it sets. Timing and experience is everything.
You get one shot at concrete. Once it's hard, there's not much you can do with it other than grind it.
In Hidden House, the concrete worktops were all cast on site to match the floor. What really set it apart, though, was the architect's insistence to use concrete with no dyes in it.
The things you get with natural concrete, you get a hell of a lot of variation in colours. That's why some architects don't like doing that. But the architects on the Hidden House, that's what they're looking for. I think I even polished that myself, so yeah, it looks smashing.
In order to cast a beautiful concrete floor like this, you need to put in movement joints that stop the slab cracking. Now, to get this crosshair to line up perfectly with this crosshair, travel along the ceiling and meet exactly with the timber, travel all the way down and rejoin its original line on the floor, well, that just takes a level of commitment and coordination that just makes me smile.
The architects were Phil Coffey and Ella Wright, who's just qualified.
Was this kind of quite a big project for you?
Yeah, well, it was the first project I've taken onto site. It was just really enjoyable collaboration.
Which are the bits that you still look at and go, that is just fantastic?
One thing I really love, actually, especially on a sunny day, is it's actually north-facing, but because of the way the skylights are designed, you actually get sunshine into the house.
There's a wonderful feeling when you walk inside. The light and the way, the view that you see, it's quite moving, actually.
The architects have pulled off the tricky job of making a house that is loved both by owners and neighbours.
It's almost as though it grows out of the gardens. And probably most surprisingly for me, it complements this wedding cake of a building, this Victorian wedding cake, beautifully.
It's hidden. It's a hidden house. And in a sense, you know, modern architecture doesn't always have to shout out. Modern architecture can be background buildings.
This background building works doubly hard. It meticulously orders its interior spaces and lights them to deliver a remarkable set of experiences. It also, almost accidentally, delivers a quiet, appreciated beauty to this crowded corner of London.
One of the golden rules of architecture is that the spaces between buildings are just as important as the spaces within. So when you make a home with 3 separate buildings, like our next contender, there is a question. How do you use that space? What's it for?
L Decorations editor-at-large, Michelle Ogundehin, headed to the Suffolk coast to see flints. It's home to Professor of Medicine Andrew Peacock and his artist wife, Gila.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you for inviting me in, may I?
Sure. They downsized from a period house in Glasgow to build this pared-back single-storey home. It's made up of 3 separate buildings, enclosing a beautiful outdoor space, a central courtyard.
Wow. This is really the main room of the house. The outside bit. Absolutely.
And we're out here sitting or reading or eating nearly every day.
The largest of the 3 brand new buildings contains an open-plan kitchen, dining and living room, a master bedroom suite, second bedroom and rear snug. The 2 other buildings are an artist's studio for Gila and alongside the garage, a study for Andrew, but both could double as bedrooms should family arrive en masse. The courtyard layout comes from Gila's childhood.
I was born in Iran, and the traditional Iranian house would have a water basin as its centre and rooms all around the water basin.
But then something is immediately occurring to me. You've got all these wonderful lines that must have taken someone an absolute age to get straight, but your pool is not centred.
It's really important that it's not. The whole concept of symmetry. Too much symmetry is sort of...
It's too perfect.
Yes. Apart from that, it's actually quite useful to have a larger space there so we can have a table and chair.
While Persian geometry influences the yard, inside is more autobiographical. A minimal canvas of predominantly white walls and clean lines, but furnished with a hodgepodge of their old furniture and Gila's art collection.
So tell me about your architect.
At the same time as we were offered the land, our daughter met a young German architect.
And wait a minute.
Sorry.
Are you about to tell me that the architect that you hired was your daughter's new boyfriend?
Yeah.
He was.
Oh, my goodness. And so...
It's very dangerous.
I mean, how long have they been going out?
About 6 months.
I mean...
It was... I don't know.
Everyone said this is the worst idea you've ever had. You'll fall out with him. You'll wreck their relationship. Everything will go wrong.
He clearly had the ability, but we had the faith.
Axel Humpert is based in Switzerland, so he partnered up with UK architect Peter Barry to help deliver his first home in this country.
From my perspective, you found the love of your life, and effectively you're prepared to risk it all for a building?
It's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you have to take it.
And did she tell you that it was his girlfriend's parents?
Yeah, he did, which was kind of brought another level to it. It was a bit more personal than some other projects, but I think that was a good thing, really.
Yeah.
The RIBA judges noticed that while Flint's appears relatively simple, it hides several intriguing surprises.
Amazing.
From a cupboard to store all of Gila's art in, to a womb-like snug, in contrast to the rest of the house.
Oh, my
Secret
goodness.
chamber.
Look at that. Oh, it's like you've made a little jewel box
Yes.
inside your house.
And the other special thing about this particular room is, of course, it's raised level. Axel thought of that. His idea was that you could sit here and join in with whatever was going on in the living room.
While the main living spaces are minimal, there are no fussy details, no ornamentation, there's still personality and fun.
But what have we here?
Well, this was Axel's idea, that we actually use the bath to separate the bathroom from the bedroom.
Suddenly your bedroom is bigger and both the bathroom is bigger.
Yes. I was sceptical about it in the beginning, but I think it's a huge success now. I really like it.
I love it.
One strong and unifying approach here involves the cladding materials on the buildings. Gila wanted locally sourced flint, which their builders had to learn to work with. The timber, inspired by local black barns, is larch, but every piece here was laboriously burnt using a traditional Japanese technique.
Originally, they did it in Japan because of the buildings being so close together. They would burn the timber, but once they fixed it onto the building, it meant that you couldn't then relight it.
It's quite fierce, isn't it?
Charring not only provides a fireproof finish, it also preserves the wood, seals it, and offers a permanent textural finish. This simple improvement to a material sort of represents the entire building, a composed and improved environment for Andrew and Gila.
Has it changed your life in a way? You've realised a dream, you have your forever home,
Yeah.
the family is all still intact. I mean...
That's good, isn't it? It has worked out to be a dream. I think it is really lovely. And it works, which I sort of slightly expected it to look very nice. I wasn't really expecting it to work. That's great.
Yes, it hasn't changed our life, but it's enriched our life.
This house has got all these clever little bespoke touches. It mixes old and new. It's got some of the traditional and some of the exotic. But more than anything else, it's a real celebration of the power of love, trust, and the possibilities of architecture.
There are already 6 homes on the shortlist, with just one more place up for grabs. Soon we'll find out who'll be claiming it.
After which we finally discover the overall winner of the grand title, House of the Year for 2017.
We're travelling the length and breadth of the country to find this year's finest house in the UK. And our final clutch of super homes are those deliberately designed to be minimal and naked, with no hint of ornament, twiddle or decoration, which makes the location of our next project very unusual.
These early 20th century arts and crafts houses in southwest London are absolutely beautiful. They are richly decorated. They're built, if you like, with the conviction of their time. So if you're going to build something now in the street, I mean, what do you build? Do you build something like this or influenced by it? No. No, what you should be doing, of course, is building something of this time that speaks with the conviction of this age.
At the end of this time-forgotten street, Whole House is a small 2-storey home, one above ground and a basement below. Built on a 70-square-metre scrap of land and hemmed in by neighbours, there could be no outward-facing windows. A fact overcome by an internal glazed courtyard and roof lights to bring light in from above. Filling the entire plot, it packs in an open-plan kitchen and living space, bedroom and bathroom around the single central courtyard. Digging out the basement provided another bedroom, bathroom and utility space. It's radically different from its richly decorated neighbours. All you can see is a single bare wall and gate, where I met the owner and the architect.
Ben, all right? You are?
I'm Nick Hayhurst, the architect.
And?
Ben Kendall.
Ben?
Yeah.
Owner?
Owner, yeah, that's right.
It's quite hard to spot the building. I mean, it's surrounded by some pretty kind of powerful houses of their time, I suppose. And then what appears to be like a garage wall.
Well, it was a garage beforehand, but what we wanted to do was make something which didn't try to compete with all of the kind of the richness and the activity in the surrounding streets.
This is a Well, how does it work?
So this is a gate which slides all the way across the house.
Right.
Then what that does is then gives you access to the bin store, the mini-me.
Oh, look!
With the bins in it.
Look at that. This is a great modern problem. How do you stop the clutter of all that plastic in front of people's homes? That is lovely, really elegant.
This is a house of solutions, the greatest of which was getting light into a home with no windows.
This is interesting. I mean that in a nice way, Nick. This is not what I expected. There's a hugely generous courtyard in the middle of the building.
Well, this is how we get all the light into this building. We've basically wrapped the circulation all the way around the courtyard, which is also this part of this idea about making the house feel as large as possible.
I like the fact that because it tapers, every staircase tapers, it actually looks 3 times as long as it really is.
It's part of this whole idea about making a very small site feel large and the false perspectives. There have been people doing this for a long time. This isn't original.
The layout of winding walkways around the mini courtyard suggests a Roman atrium or monastic precinct. But one of Nick's more modern conjuring tricks is to place a skylight in each corner of the house.
This is large and light and airy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Above the kitchen and the lounge, they draw the eye upwards, which only increases the illusion of space.
And it's got access to its own private garden.
Yeah, and there's this, a lovely kind of outside space, and we're in the sun at the moment.
Beautiful, beautiful.
With no outward-facing windows, all the glass has been made to work that little bit harder.
You must have a kind of list of no-brainer element tricks that you have to put into a building to suggest greater space.
It's managing daylight, and it's almost sculpting the daylight is actually the dark art, excuse the pun, of how you kind of manage making the most out of these small spaces.
Do you get this stuff?
Yeah, sort of. All I know is that Nick does not like right angles.
For a building with so few right angles, it's extraordinarily efficient. The RIBA judges were impressed by the perfectly executed detailing, following the minimalist mantra of less is more. There are no skirting boards or architraves here, just clean-lined storage, which continues right down to the basement. Lit from above through glass insets in the courtyard floor, an idea borrowed from Georgian pavements. Plenty of precedent, though it wasn't easy to build.
It's a rectangular plot, and everywhere was surrounded by neighbours, bar half of one side, and that was our pure sole access point. So it made it even more tricky. Small space, surrounded by everyone.
Yeah.
The strategy involved designing a 1.5 metre deep ring beam that went around the site, which was poured first, then the land was excavated down, and then the ring beam was underpinned.
This is exactly how wells are dug.
Yes, it's a kind of medieval technology. There you go. Nothing's changed that much.
Nearly 100 skips of soil had to be removed from site. This tiny, angled, complicated, expensive house had to be then wrangled from the earth. So it's surprising to learn that its owner, Ben, who is admittedly a developer, only ever intends to rent it out.
It's a let property. It was always intended to be, as it were, commercially viable. So do you get full value?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I mean, the commercial letting side of it doesn't work.
Yeah.
This is architecturally led development, if you like.
So where's the future for you, then? Is it back to, stack my bill, I'm cheap?
No, not at all. I realised, actually, you could build something not just average, but great.
Brilliant.
And why not? If you want to leave something behind on this earth, leave some really good buildings, and that's what I'm trying to do.
The judges respected that, feeling that Whole House is an exceptional place to live, using great design skill to overcome the extreme constraints of the site. It's an object lesson in conjuring a lot from a little, light from nowhere, and beauty from a hole in the ground.
For a small modern house, this building actually contains a lot of big historical references. From the architecture of Roman villas, medieval cloisters, even the Georgian townhouse. But then, you see, As Wilson Misner, the American playwright, wrote, to pinch one idea is plagiarism. To pinch two is research. And actually, in the case of this place, to pinch dozens and whisk them into one beautiful, coherent whole is genius.
So that's it. We've seen all our cool, minimal and naked houses. But which, if any, will win a place on the shortlist? In the running are Highgate House, a monument to refined minimalism in brick. Hidden House, obsessively and beautifully crafted into place on a ridiculously restricted site. Flint's 3 charred black buildings around a Persian courtyard. And Whole House, a light-filled home that winds itself around a central garden. Deborah Saunt is the chair of the judges' panel, and she has the verdict.
So, Deborah, you've chosen a shortlisted project from this category.
We've got one, Hidden House.
Hidden House.
A delightful tiny project.
This house intrigues me because what it does really well is use light in a very controlled way.
It really does. It felt effortless because of this natural light, just linking it all together. It can drop from above, it can be in slices. He doesn't just put a big roof light in the centre of the room. He balances 2 extraordinary roof lights that come and almost touch each other.
Hey! Very good too, yeah, it's wonderful. She got 100% record. She's only done one building.
It feels incredible. It's exciting, it's sort of the start of my professional career, so it's very motivating and look forward to doing a lot more.
No way.
What?
That's good. That's good. That's amazing. Here, I think the house deserves it, for sure. So, I'm trying to be modest, but I wouldn't be surprised if we win.
High five.
So, Hidden House completes the shortlist of 7 homes. Now all that remains is to discover who will reign victorious. Which home will be named House of the Year for 2017. So, we've now finished our tour of the long list and found out who's on the shortlist for House of the Year 2017. But before we discover the champion of champions, let's consider what makes a winner.
And what would you choose if you were a judge? Maybe I can give you some pointers here. Is the building well built? Is it fit for purpose and solid? Is it ergonomic and easy to use? Does it bring joy and pleasure into your life every day? And context, does the building respond well to where it is? Actually, no. Does the building enhance where it is?
Last year's winner, the architect Richard Murphy's own house in Edinburgh, delivers all this and more. It's a highly sustainable, adaptable, experimental home, rich in inspiration.
When we won, of course, the press went to town and it was all over the Sun and the Daily Mail. Wallace and Gromit House wins award. There's pulleys and there's moving bits and sliding bits. Actually, to be blunt, this is a serious work of architecture. It's actually very serious. You know, it's not a joke, it's not fun. Can you please look at it as a serious work of architecture? Did things here which I would never dare to do with a client, just in case they went wrong. The mechanised shutters, I would have been nervous doing those for a client. The big pivoting stone panels, that could have gone horribly wrong.
The last thing this highly crafted, erudite and joyous home is self-conscious. It points forwards.
I don't think it follows necessarily current architectural fashion. I think that architecture goes beyond fashion. I mean, it's much more long-lasting. That's the real test of a work of architecture, whether you can come back in 50 years' time and still think it's really quite wonderful and want to visit it. But it also lifts your heart as well.
The positive energy of great buildings can reverberate through the ages. But which of this year's shortlist have what it takes? Have the magnitude to do that? Could it be Ness Point, an adaptable, polished and sinuous clifftop home near Dover? The surreal space-age vessel that is Sixwood Lane. Caring wood, inspired by castles, oast houses and the principle of shared family life. Shorm House, a composed and modest rural retreat built against a garden wall. New House of Auchengree, an energetic farm-like collection of sharp zinc boxes. The Quest, a powerful, cantilevered and beautiful expression of the modernist home. Or Hidden House, bristling with craftsmanship. Tucked and folded away in London.
With such breadth and depth in the shortlist, choosing a winner is like comparing apples and pears, chalk and cheese. The unenviable task of making a final decision, however, falls again to the panel of judges.
I've got a clear favourite, yeah. I've seen a lot of white painted plasterboard lately.
It's a very beautiful home. I think I'm a bit jealous, actually. I think there's a sort of element of nastiness and bitterness creeping in, so I've got to watch that.
It's going to be a tricky process, I think. It's going to be a long evening.
Provocative, innovative, but sort of timeless at the same time.
But sometimes I thought, well, I've seen that, and I've seen that, and I've seen that.
Unfortunately, in this country, usually a lot of money equals kitsch.
After all the deliberation, there can be only one winner, and I'm on my way to congratulate them.
Oh, look. This is the entry phone to this house. It sort of gives it away, doesn't it? Traditional materials. Big gateposts. Long drive.
With a few hints, but no pregnant pauses, the winner of House of the Year for 2017 is Caring Wood. Set in the Kent countryside and built for 3 generations of the same family, it's partly inspired by the traditional oast houses of the area. If ever a home marked its place, time and context with more confidence and assertion, I've yet to see it. Almost 8 years in the making, this is not just a remarkably well-built and beautiful building. It's a mix of private rooms and shared communal space that offers a new way of thinking about how life might be shared. There's a higher purpose here, beyond the need to make a landmark.
Hello?
The architects are Niall Maxwell and James MacDonald Wright, whose father-in-law commissioned the house.
No, many, many congratulations.
Thank you.
What a great building.
It all seems quite remarkable, to be honest. It's a wonderful recognition of all of that effort that we've put in, but also a wonderful team of many, many skilled people.
We know that this project was totally unusual to be working at this scale, that this project was a house that was for 100 years. It wasn't just for 10 or 20. It was something that needed to mature and grow.
The views from the house, from this piece of land, are remarkable. We've got the views of North Downs and the Pilgrim's Way. It's also the centre of the Garden of England.
And you've planted a lot of fruit trees.
We have. We've planted over 27,000 trees. That link between house and landscape is very much part of the tradition of the English country house.
This is a 21st century country mansion designed for multi-generational living. And yet its language lies in the vernacular of local oast houses and the landscape of Kent. Although full of intersecting angles, twisted roof lines and extraordinary geometry, the house is designed around one quite simple idea.
We have the square with the courtyard in the centre, with 4 separate houses on each corner.
Yeah.
And we've pushed that over the edge of the slope and twisted it to respond better to the topography of the hill. This produces something that looks quite complex, but actually is relatively straightforward.
There are no pretensions to grandeur here. At every turn, this building is rooted in the language of the region. 150,000 tiles were handmade from local clay. Kentish ragstone came from down the road. The coppiced chestnut cladding and the terracotta flooring come from nearby. And there's no pretension or grandeur to the layout either. It's relaxed and informal and begins in the private little satellite buildings.
So, from the upstairs study in this oast house, I come down to the accommodation for this oast house. It's got a kitchenette, a utility room, sitting room, bedroom. You know, it sort of reminds me of those apartments you'd find in classical country houses, you know, where the squire would live or the farm manager, you know? And it leads to the more sophisticated family rooms with a courtyard.
The 4 long rooms around the central courtyard, one on each side, run sociably into each other. It's certainly not ostentatious.
Until you get to those big public areas where everything gets much, much bigger and louder, including the space above your head.
In the tradition of great country houses, there's a performance space and art gallery, resources to generously share with a wider audience. You might think this place's ambition and scale influenced the judges, but actually that's not why it won.
I worried it would be monumental, but in fact it was incredibly intimate. It's just so simple. There are no gold taps, there are no bells and whistles. It's just beautifully sculpted space.
You must have had some misgivings about the cost of this kind of scheme, because it doesn't exactly, how should I say, set a template for the average 3-bedroom family home, does it?
Well, that's where we had our passionate conversation, because this actually shows that homes can still evolve. And it challenges you to say, how can you share your home? Is this a model that you could apply in a denser urban situation, maybe with co-housing? Do we need all this individualised space? Can we actually share space in different ways?
As much thought has been put into the landscaping and tree planting as the house itself. The ancient site of caring wood on which it sits will thrive again.
How does the building and this garden and the landscape beyond relate and grow?
What we've tried to put in place, I suppose the structure for here is something that can grow and change. So both the house and the landscape. This is really not the end of the project, this is the beginning of the project. And what happens over the next 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, that's actually the exciting bit, where we go from here.
Well, not difficult to see why this won, is it? It resonates to where it is and to the people that made it. Oh, and by the way, it's also 0 carbon in use as well, I forgot to say. You know, architectural theorists have a term to describe this kind of building. They call it critical regionalism. But let's not use that term. Let's instead use the language and the ideas that our day and age has to offer. Let's think of this architecture instead as organic, free range, and locally grown.